Chapter 609. That second disciple of mine, Wuxia, is also extremely talented, but he is also affectionate. After he finished learning, I sent him out to roam the Jianghu and gain some experience. My original intention was to let him gain experience in the Jianghu and then return to inherit my legacy. However, after this B***starred left, he only roamed the martial world for 4 to 5 years. He kept a low profile, never stirring up trouble, and didn't really fight anyone. Besides, he wasn't idling around these years either. Other than looking for a wife, he took on concubines. In the end, I waited anxiously for him to go back and inherit my legacy, but all I saw was a bunch of wives coming back to kowtow to me. Then, he brought them to live in seclusion. Wuxia said helplessly. He had accepted a total of 3 disciples. The one that he thought would be able to inherit his legacy had long since died in battle, and the remaining 2 were both weirdos. Ling Xiaozue and the other 2 coughed dryly. He really didn't know what to say. Wuxia's luck was truly heaven-defying. Others wouldn't even be able to get a disciple like this in their entire lives. He, on the other hand, had taken 2. However, if he were to put himself in Wuxia's shoes, what would he do if he were Wuxia and saw his disciple bringing a bunch of wives back to tell him that he was going to retire? Thinking about it, he could only sigh. He could totally understand Wuxia's feeling of being F***ked back then. Yunyang was the only one who could not help clicking his tongue. Tisk, tisk, how enviable. He found a bunch of wives and lived in seclusion. There were a lot of keywords in this. Just how big of a pile was it? The third disciple is this kid's master, Xiaoqing. That guy's temperament is erratic, narcissistic and pretentious, and he's also soft-hearted. Once he encounters good wine, he'll lose his life. That year, I sent him to the White Snow Peak to get the 10,000 years snow lotus seed. My original intention was to help him build up his foundation. Who would have thought that there would be no news of this guy for half a year? After drinking outside for 3 months, he actually lost the 10,000 years snow lotus seed when he returned. Wuxia sighed until his hair had turned white. He went back in a daze. I asked him where the snow lotus seed was. This bastard touched his chest and said that, but when he reached out to touch it, he didn't find it. He was muttering to himself, where did he drop it? Over there? Or here? Or, he didn't even know when he fell. Furthermore, there were no battles along the way, so it definitely wasn't stolen. It was clear that it was lost after getting drunk. At that time, this old man was so angry that his liver and gallbladder almost exploded. Ha ha ha. Ling Xiaozue, Feng Xianga, and Gu Chaoyang were close to tears from laughter. What the F***ck was too weird. Wuxia chuckled bitterly. It was a grave mistake to miss his opportunity, and he was so unreliable. How could he be of any use? After teaching him a lesson, I chased him out of the school and told him to scram. He was strictly forbidden to say that he was my disciple, and he was not allowed to use my name to deceive others. It's been more than 300 years, Ling Xiaozue asked in surprise. Isn't he the disciple you took in after your retirement? Wuxia nodded. I saw a child who had fainted by the side of the road, so I brought him back. After spending a few days with him, I took a liking to him and decided to take him in as my disciple. Unfortunately, he's another weirdo. Everyone was speechless. They really did not know what to say. I didn't expect this child to really not give me up after so many years. Wuxia looked up at the sky, lost in thought. After a while, he finally lowered his head to ask Bai Yishue, your master. Xiaoqing. Is he still alive? Bai Yishue answered respectfully, Master is still alive, but the old man has long left the martial world. He lives in seclusion at Black Cloud Peak now. He doesn't usually come down. Is he still addicted to alcohol? Wuxia asked with a frown. This disciple has followed master for many years, but I've never seen the old man drink a drop of alcohol, Bai Yixue answered with his head lowered. Bai Yixue now understood why his master did not touch a drop of alcohol. So that was it. He could not help but sigh for his master. If he were to encounter such a thing, he would probably not touch a drop of alcohol for the rest of his life. He lifted his head and looked at Dugu Cho passionately, an unconcealable pleading glint in his eyes. Not a drop of alcohol. Not a drop of alcohol. Dugu Cho sighed deeply and murmured to himself. Ling Xiaozui and the others were moved as well. A drunkard who treated alcohol like his life had suddenly abstained from alcohol for the rest of his life. How strong was his determination? They could not help but want to persuade him as well. Fine, when you see your master again. Dugu Cho mused for a long time and finally said softly, "Tell him that this old man allows him to return to my school. Let him come and kowtow." "Thank you, Grand Master." Bai Yixue was overjoyed and was about to kneel and kowtow. "No." Dugu Cho said faintly, "You'll only be my grand disciple after your master has kowtowed. Right now, there's nothing between us." He murmured, "I still remember how Xiaoqing was addicted to alcohol all those years ago. He hadn't touched a drop of alcohol for so many years. Of course, he was filled with regret. How could he let someone else kowtow in front of him?" Bai Yixue's eyes were brimming with tears. After a long time, Bai Yixue calmed himself down and said rather abashedly, "I still don't know Grandmaster's name." Dugu Cho said faintly, "This old man is Dugu Cho." Once the name was spoken, it was like a bomb exploding above Bai Yixue's head. Bai Yixue could only feel himself swaying twice, almost losing his footing and falling onto the table. Dugu Cho, the legendary name that had always been at the pinnacle of the continent, above the clouds, was like worshipping a god to the world. The unrivaled expert whose name shook the world and intimidated the martial world was actually right in front of him. It was his own grandmaster, too. Furthermore, he had just exchanged blows with him. Bai Yixue was flushed, at a loss for words. He was stunned for a long time before he suddenly slapped himself on the face, feeling too ashamed to show his face. If he had only pretended to his grandmaster, he would still be able to justify himself despite it being unworthy. However, when it came to the world's unrivaled expert, there was only tragedy. A tragic life was nothing more than this. Bai Yixue could already imagine that today's battle would be enough to go down in Tianxian continent's history of embarrassing battles. He would become the laughing stock of the martial world, a laughing stock for the rest of his life. Sigh, cough, cough. Yunyang coughed for a good while before he managed to suppress his laughter and said, "Bai Yi, let me introduce you." He pointed at Ling Xiaozui and said, "To your grandmaster, this is the cream of the crop among the younger generation. He's quite famous." Bai Yixue coughed and said, "No matter how famous he is, he's at most the same seniority as my master." He was still thinking to himself, so what if he's famous? Can he be more famous than Jun Moyan? "He's Ling Xiaozui," said Yun Yang. Cough, cough, cough. Bai Yixue coughed madly at once. For a moment, his face flushed red, and he plopped down on the ground. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that such a name would explode in his ears. Two legends of the age, two unrivaled experts. It was too shocking. Chapter 610. Bai Yixue was speechless with shock. In terms of reputation, there were only 3 to 5 people in this world who could defeat Jun Moyan. Yet, you managed to find 2 of them in one go. "Young master, are you toying with me or are you toying with me?" Ling Xiaozui nodded with a smile. When he introduced Feng Xiang'e, Bai Yixue was quick to greet him respectfully. Obviously, this fellow had realized that the person who was with Dugu Cho and Ling Xiaozui would not be an ordinary person. As expected, it was another shock. Although the phantom physician god of wine Feng Xiang's reputation was not above that of Jun Moyan's, it was not inferior at all. And this. Just as Yun Yang was about to introduce Gu Chaoyang, he saw the latter shake his head slightly, so he corrected himself, "This is Gu. Senior Gu." Bai Xue was still respectful. What a joke. This must be someone important as well, someone who would not pale in comparison to Jun Moyan. Names were no longer important, as long as there was no hint of disrespect. Everyone will be staying in the residence of Yun from now on. We are one family. Following Yun Yang's announcement, Bai Xue cheered, "Young master, I have to go back immediately to invite my master over." Dugucho was relieved. This matter was his master's lifelong regret. Now that there was a chance to remedy it, Bai Xue could not wait a moment longer and could not wait to tell his master the good news. Actually, Yun Yang was just as eager to do so. Bai Xue's master, Dugucho's only surviving disciple, he must be a superb expert as well. Even if there were 8 to 10 of such people coming every day, it would not be too much. Find them quickly, and don't even think of leaving once they're here. Go quickly, go quickly. Leave now. Remember to go and come back early. Yun Yang was grinning from ear to ear. The other experts rolled their eyes at him. It was obvious that they had seen through a certain someone's petty heart and unscrupulous intentions. All of them came to the same conclusion: this child was too unreserved. Even if he was short on manpower now, there was no need to show such a face. What an urgent need. Yun Yang looked at the 4 experts eagerly. All 4 of them rolled their eyes in response. Cough, let's all rest first. It's really getting late. Yun Yang smiled. Seeing that Bai Xue had left, there was nothing else to be done. Now that he had these 4 people in his house, he had nothing to worry about and could sleep soundly without any worries. For a moment, Yun Yang had completely let go of the mentality that he had been treading on thin ice. His jittery mind was relaxed, and he felt no fatigue in his body. He wished he could just lie down and sleep for 3 days and 3 nights. This was the first time in his life that he had such a wonderful feeling of having a backer behind him, of having someone to stand up for him even if the sky collapsed. The feeling was actually not bad. Returning to his room, Yun Yang was surprised to find Ji Lingxi waiting for him in his yard. "Why are you sitting here? It's rare to see the pinnacle of this world outside." Yun Yang was rather surprised. Although Ji Lingxi was a girl, she was also a cultivator and had reached the heaven realm. Although her ability was not as impressive as Ling Xiaozue and the others, she was still a true ace cultivator. Ji Lingxi smiled and said faintly, "Even if I go out, I won't be able to speak. I'll only be embarrassed. These people outside are all top-notch experts, aren't they?" They are indeed top-notch experts. 2 of them are the legendary Dugucho and Ling Xiaozue. The third is the phantom physician, the god of wine, Feng Xiang. As for the last person, he's even more mysterious and has an impressive background, Yun Yang briefly introduced. After all, they would be meeting each other frequently in this yard in the future. It was necessary to greet each other first to prevent any misunderstandings. I knew that they're not ordinary guests. Ji Lingxi smiled and said, all right. Now that there are 4 more people here, you can finally have a good night's sleep without worry. It's been such a long time and you haven't had a good rest. It's a rare opportunity, have a good sleep. Ji Lingxi smiled and walked out after she finished speaking. Yun Yang wanted to say something more, but he felt drowsy and could no longer suppress it. He quickly took off his shoes and fell asleep on the bed. Just as Ji Lingxi had said, his exhaustion had reached its peak. Ever since he had escaped death at Tianxian Cliff, he had spent almost 2 years with his heart in his throat. He did not even dare to close his eyes when he slept. There had never been a time when he could sleep in peace. Now that he had finally calmed down, he could no longer suppress his exhaustion. All he wanted to do was to have a good nap. As a result, Yun Yang did not notice Ji Lingxi's unusual behavior at all. Under normal circumstances, experts like Du Guchou and Ling Xiaozue would cause a commotion no matter where they appeared. Cultivators with a certain level of cultivation base could not help but be shaken and yearn to meet them. What was more, they had appeared directly in one's own house and were staying in the same yard. The shock would only be more intense. As an ace cultivator, Ji Lingxi should not be an exception. However, when she heard Yun Yang mention the names, there was no shock in her expression at all, as if she had only heard a few very ordinary names. That was all. This was already very wrong. Ji Lingxi walked out of Yun Yang's room quietly and walked back step by step. When she reached the flowering tree, she stopped and turned back to look. Yun Yang's room was completely dark, with only the faint sound of snoring coming from within. With Yun Yang's current cultivation base, the only explanation for the sound of snoring was that he was in a deep sleep that was both physical and mental. Ji Lingxi sighed softly and sat down in the gazebo. There was a hint of confusion in her eyes, as if she could not understand the dilemma of making a decision. "I don't understand." In the night, a soft sigh could be heard. Nothing happened for the next 2 days. The peace lasted until the night of the third day. A loud bang came from somewhere in the western city's outskirts. It was the sound of a door being smashed. A long howl shook the air. "Four Seasons Tower's men, come out and meet your death." The assassins had finally made their move. Their target was the Four Seasons Tower. These few days, the Four Seasons Tower's movements had never stopped, despite appearing to be quiet and uneventful on the surface. To Snow, Frost, and Sword, there was no need for them to be wary of anyone showing themselves in the world. Their eyes were bloodshot with hatred. What almighty being was in Tiantang City? It did not matter. Nothing is more important than avenging my brother. Moreover, Du Guchou had never shown any kindness to the Four Seasons Tower and was in cahoots with Ling Xiaozue. Of course, he was the Four Seasons Tower's enemy. If Snow, Frost, and Sword did not take action, they would be fools. They commanded the 200 to 300 men from the Four Seasons Tower to gather information about the assassins from all directions. Once they found something, they would go straight to the Four Seasons Tower's doorstep without hesitation. Although it had only been 2 to 3 days, the number of assassins from the Hall of Crimson Blade and the Merciless Tower who had died in their hands, both inside and outside the city. There were also many martial world assassins who did not belong to the two organizations but were recruited by the dictum of death. Those who had died in their hands were even more numerous. The Four Seasons Tower's operation in Tiantang City consisted of more than a dozen people each time. Their targets were usually 1 or 2 lone assassins. Of course, it was always successful and the results were remarkable. On the other hand, the Hall of Crimson Blade's leader, Hong Zhan, and the Merciless Tower's Han Bieli dared not make a move due to their fear of the mysterious expert. They had missed the opportunity, allowing the Four Seasons Tower to take them down one by one. They had suffered heavy losses and the reputation of the dictum of death had been greatly diminished. In spite of this, both of them were veterans who had been in the martial world for a long time. Their reflexes were swift. They knew that it was not a good idea to continue to be passive, so they made up their minds and moved immediately. The dictum of death was issued once more. At midnight the next day, the world's assassins gathered outside the city's south gate to discuss their plan. The so-called plan was nothing more than gathering manpower to retaliate against the Four Seasons Tower. Since the world's assassins had gathered, how could they live up to the name of the dictum of death if they did not do something big? That night, as the initiators, the Hall of Crimson Blade and the Merciless Tower had mobilized more than half of their experts. Adding on to the many freelance assassins who were operating in the dark, there were more than 500 people participating in this operation. We're going to completely destroy the Four Seasons Tower's force in Tiantang City with the force of a mountain. Leave no room for negotiation. Leave no one alive. To ensure the success of this operation, the Hall of Crimson Blades Hongzhan and the Merciless Towers Henbieli had even issued a joint announcement, inviting the concourse of the underworld to participate. The Merciless Towers leader, Henbieli, had personally handed over a letter of apology, repeatedly apologizing for the kindness shown to the concourse of the underworld previously. He had even promised to owe the concourse of the underworld a huge favor and that there would be a day when he would repay it. When the concourse of the underworld's King Qingguang saw the news, he naturally sought out Yun Yang to discuss the matter. When the time comes, we only need to spread the wraith fog and it will mean that the concourse of the underworld has made a move. Yun Yang said, actually, we shouldn't show ourselves. We won't join in the fray during such a chaotic time. Knowing that the area covered by the wraith fog is large enough, who dares to say that the concourse of the underworld hasn't done its best? First Court King Qingguang chuckled strangely, appearing to be in a good mood. We all like to watch the show as well. We especially like to sit back and watch the tigers fight. Yun Yang rolled his eyes, speechless. Yun Yang had underestimated the concourse of the underworld's 10 kings' enthusiasm for watching the show. That night, the wraith fog expanded and wreaked havoc like never before. All 10 court kings were dispatched at the same time, forming groups to watch the show. Yun Yang, who had the same thought, was fuming. Was there a need for so many people to come together just to watch the show? Do you all know how much risk you have to bear to watch this show? If only 1 or 2 people had come, we could have run away immediately if the situation had gone awry. However, all of you have come, this confidence is too much. Once any accident happens, as long as there's a slight reluctance to retreat, all of you will come out to fight. Don't let us, who are here to watch the show, fight on our home ground in the end. That would be so suffocating. You should know that the Four Seasons Tower's combat power is not limited to this. There's still Mr. Nian and another top-notch expert coveting from the sidelines. If they think it's necessary to intervene in this battle, do you think the future of the enemy will still be beautiful? Now that everyone was here, Yun Yang had no choice but to adapt to the situation. Yutong's King Xiaoyao, Lord Marquis Yun, had come to watch the show as well. Other than that, there were many experts hiding in the dark who were also watching the show from the sidelines. After all, most of them had the thought that the gathering of the world's assassins might really be able to dampen the Four Seasons Tower's morale. It would be even better if they could take advantage of the situation. In spite of this, Yun Yang was greatly shaken once again as he watched the show unfold. The Four Seasons Tower's formidable capabilities and the assassins' peculiar methods of attack were an eye-opener for everyone present. They lived up to their reputation. The Four Seasons Tower's response was clear: the Four Seasons Tower's reputation must not fall. They would never retreat. If 1 came, they would kill 1, if 2 came, they would kill both. It was an open fight, an open fight. A huge yard was divided into 4 directions: north, south, east, and west. 3 experts were assigned to guard in the dark in each direction. These 3 people did not care about anything else, they were only responsible for dealing with the enemies that came their way. When the 3 of them were dead, tired, or injured, the Four Seasons Tower would then send out 3 more people to take over. This was an arrogant declaration: no matter how many of you come, I will deal with them with only these people. The assassins' tricks were endless as well. There was nothing they could not think of, nothing they could not do. The one who started the battle and took the lead in smashing open the door was the Merciless Tower's leader, Henbieli. With a push of his palm, the door was flung open. However, this move did not mean anything. It was only a declaration of war, a proclamation of war. After all, those who participated in this battle were all experts who came and went. Who would still use the door? A gust of wind blew, and dust flew into the air. A few rotten leaves spun in the air before slowly falling to the ground. It was quiet all around. There was only the dusky underworld fog floating in the night sky. It looked like it was everywhere. When the leaves fluttered to the ground, countless chilling blades flew out from the leaves. Chapter 6:11. The saber rain that filled the sky was denser and more frequent than the countless fallen leaves. Horizontally, vertically, whirling, circling, slanting, all of them brought with them the sound of the wind. Every single slash was accompanied by the terrifying sound of the wind breaking. It was not difficult to imagine that if one were to be grazed by such a saber, one would be covered in wounds such as a broken arm or a broken leg. If it was a serious one, one would be disemboweled. It was a matter of life and death. Who dared be careless? Even these assassins, who had walked the line between life and death for years, dared not underestimate it. The sky was not only filled with the interweaving of withered leaves and saber blades, there were also many other weapons, swords, spikes, daggers, and flying needles that were as thin as a cow's hair. They came one after another, filling in every gap that was slightly exposed. There was not a single gap, but it had become a lethal threat instead. This was not all. When one of the fallen leaves landed on top of one of the Four Seasons Tower's experts without a sound, a huge hammer suddenly leaped out from it. How could a large hammer be transformed from a fallen leaf? But all of this was reflected in tonight's battle. Such a transformation was appalling, unbelievable, and unimaginable. Yun Yan was dazzled by the sight, sighing inwardly that each profession had its own way of doing things. These assassins had all sorts of tricks up their sleeves. Even with Yun Yang's current cultivation base, he might not be able to handle such a lethal attack. It would be perfect if he could escape unscathed from such a lethal attack. Unless his cloud manifestation power was restored, he dared not say that he could face it with ease and come out unscathed. As the attacks from the assassins intensified, silhouettes appeared from the thick fog, the withered leaves, and the night sky, as if they had appeared out of thin air. Many of the assassins used their own strength to launch close-range attacks, and their attack power was greatly increased. It was incomparable to the long-range attacks at the beginning. Every flash was an attack, and it was accompanied by a considerable attack power. After the attack, regardless of whether it was effective or not, or whether it was successful or not, they would immediately disappear. The assassins had completely executed the basic strategy of fleeing 1,000 miles away if they missed their target. There were no flaws at all. After a while, all sorts of strange phenomena began to appear in an unending stream. There were huge lotuses, huge leaves that seemed to be illusory yet real, and there were even rippling waves of water. All of them had assassins appearing one after another. Putting everything else aside, just by looking at the various and varied methods, it was already impossible to estimate just how many assassins there were and how many people were involved in this operation. At this moment, the assassins who happened to be present had displayed their trump cards. They were the most effective tactics against the Four Seasons Tower at the moment. If the attack failed, they would retreat immediately. However, they did not expect to succeed, ensuring that their combat power would be minimized. Such a strategy was definitely the most brilliant. On the other hand, the Four Seasons Tower's 12 experts had been standing with their backs against each other in a triangular formation. Even when faced with such a terrifying attack that was like a rising tide, each wave higher than the last, their expressions were still indifferent. They attacked almost mechanically, countering every move without the slightest hint of panic. However, as soon as an assassin showed himself and retreated slightly slower, one of them would immediately try his best to hold them back while the other two were responsible for delivering the fatal blow. This kind of attack was like a needle being inserted at every opportunity, and there was never the slightest mistake. The Four Seasons Tower's assassin techniques had never missed a single moment. This kind of combat experience was simply shocking and terrifying. It was also because of this tactic that, no matter how ingenious and cunning the assassins' attacks were, retreating as soon as they missed their target, cries of pain could still be heard from time to time. Fresh blood, broken arms, and broken limbs. They were even flying around non-stop, dancing all over the sky. The entire night was already filled with the pungent smell of blood and streams of blood. The current situation of the battle was brutal, but the situation was clear. The Four Seasons Tower's men had not retreated an inch, adopting the strategy of combining offense with defense. They allowed the assassins to attack with all sorts of methods while they defended themselves tightly. Once they caught a glimpse of the opponent's weakness, they would immediately join forces to kill them. There had never been a single mistake. The tactic was old and simplistic, but after some consideration, Yunyang realized that it was the best way to deal with the current situation. A simple, unchanging strategy was sufficient to deal with the current situation. Currently, the leading experts of the Four Seasons Tower had yet to show themselves. Similarly, the top experts of the assassin organizations outside did not act recklessly and intervene in the battle. Because, they dared not. It was because both sides were hiding their trump cards. Obviously, they did not have much confidence in when the other party would strike. They did not want to act rashly, lest they lose everything if they were careless. Whoever made the first move would be exposed. They could only continue fighting like this. The only outcome would be no result. Even if there were many casualties, it would not hurt their foundation. Yunyang calculated in his heart. Although Sword, Frost, and Snow had deliberately made enemies out of the Four Seasons Tower, they did not want to die early. Only by deepening the enmity between the Four Seasons Tower and the top assassin organizations, to the point of forming an irreconcilable enmity, was the best outcome for them. To achieve such an outcome, the longer the battle dragged on. Be it on their side or the other, the more deaths, the better. Based on this premise, the Four Seasons Tower would never jump out in the open and expose all of their abilities to the enemy, giving the enemy leeway to arrange their troops and launch targeted attacks. The situation of the battle continued to intensify, and the casualty rate of the assassins also increased. No matter how ingenious and strange a surprise attack method was, it was inevitable that it would increase the chances of being seen through by the other party. It was no longer a secret technique. However, as the number of casualties among the assassins increased rapidly, the Four Seasons Tower's men had also been rotated 3 times, resulting in a high number of casualties. Of the first 2 batches of men who had been rotated, 15 of them had died in battle while the remaining 9 were severely injured. Even when they were brought back, they could no longer contribute to the battle. The assassins were actually happy to see such an outcome. The difference in the high-end combat power of both sides was still unknown, but in terms of manpower, the assassins would definitely have the upper hand. Even though the assassins suffered more casualties, it did not affect the overall battle. In spite of this, the Four Seasons Tower's venerable Lord Sword, Snow, and Frost had yet to show themselves, causing the assassins to be filled with suspicion. It was as if they did not care about such casualties at all. It was especially so for the assassins who had the guts to participate in the battle. Those who had the guts to participate in the battle were all experienced and knowledgeable, but with just a glance, they did not recognize anyone from the Four Seasons Tower. All of them were so unfamiliar that it was baffling. Where did the Four Seasons Tower's experts come from? Was the Four Seasons Tower's foundation really so unfathomable? There were so many of them, but no one knew them. This was a huge problem in itself. No one recognized them. Could it be that these people fell from the sky? Such doubts existed, but they were gradually fading away. To be able to become a famous assassin, one would definitely not be a weak-willed person. At this moment, they had the absolute advantage in numbers. With some veteran assassins joining the battlefield, and even some super assassins preparing to take action, the originally balanced situation of the battle began to tilt. At least, the pressure that the Four Seasons Tower's experts had to bear had increased by a few folds. Hen Bieli and Hong Zhan were hidden in the dark, watching the great battle with rapt attention. Both of them had the same thought lingering in their minds: how many people from the Four Seasons Tower were involved in this battle? Furthermore, how much of the Four Seasons Tower's ability had been displayed in this battle? Regardless, even though the assassins had the upper hand, both of them felt an indescribable bitterness in their hearts. The reason was simple. Just as Venerable Lord Sword, Frost, and Snow had predicted, the two top assassin organizations had been forced to this stage. The most important word was that he was forced. They had been forced. Their original intention in coming to Tiantang City was to do business and earn money. They only needed to kill a child, a prince, or a young master. This was where their goal lay. Once they completed this, everything would be a success. They could then take the generous reward and escape to the martial world. Even if Yutong were to conquer Tianxian, they would be too far away to do anything to them. Who would have thought that the Four Seasons Tower's men would charge at them in a completely unreasonable manner just as they arrived and had just begun to scout the place? Nothing had even begun yet. They killed and killed along the way. Have we offended you? How have we offended you? Countless capable subordinates died tragically in such an inexplicable manner. Those who were carrying out their missions were killed for no apparent reason. Many missions were terminated prematurely and could no longer be continued. In desperation, the two leaders personally rushed over to deal with this huge change. In all fairness, both of them were afraid of the Four Seasons Tower's infamy. Their initial plan was not to denounce the Four Seasons Tower directly, but to have a talk, to find out what was going on, and if there were any misunderstandings in between, then they would think of a way to resolve this attitude. However, the Four Seasons Tower was not willing to comply with such a small request. They had still declared war and killed aggressively. They had pushed the two top assassin organizations to the opposite side and were still killing non-stop every day. Such an approach had undoubtedly pushed all the assassin organizations in the martial world to the opposite side of the Four Seasons Tower. Why was this so? It was stupid. Such a stupid move should not have appeared in the Four Seasons Tower. The Four Seasons Tower was a powerful force. It disliked the world's famous assassin organizations and had first targeted the concourse of the underworld, killing them to the point where they were not even a tenth of their original strength. This was a fact. However, according to intelligence, the source of this incident was because the concourse of the underworld had started it by targeting the Four Seasons Tower's leader, Supreme Lord Springfrost. This had triggered the Four Seasons Tower's retaliation. In spite of this, they had now attacked the other two top assassin organizations. Was this not a little too much? Hen Bieli and Hong Zhan could not figure out why all of this had happened, no matter how hard they racked their brains. They felt that everything was muddled. Hong Zhan had a part in Venerable Lord Ice's death, but there was obviously an inside story behind Venerable Lord Ice's death. If they were to explain the situation, the Four Seasons Tower was still not in the right. However, the biggest problem now was that the Four Seasons Tower was not being reasonable at all. They had been going all out to kill. What could they do? They had been passively accepting the attacks and had come to such a state, yet they did not know the reason behind it. This was the first time in the lives of the leaders of the two top assassin organizations. The only feeling I have now is that there's a hand behind the scenes silently pushing things forward. Hen Bieli frowned. Although this feeling is vague and illogical, I'm certain that it exists. Hong Zhan sighed as well. I have the same feeling too. No matter what we've done in the past, it's never been so smooth. However, nothing has gone according to our wishes in this trip to Tiantang City. No, it's not just not going according to our wishes. It's like we're sitting at home and trouble comes from the sky. It's inexplicable and there's no way to avoid it. It's as if someone is directing us, but we have no clue as to why. Someone who's directing us like this shouldn't exist at all. What's more frightening is that the Four Seasons Tower's intelligence is too accurate. We've been hiding in Tiantang City, and many of us have been staying in private residences. We've been acting according to the situation and haven't been reported at all. Even our own people don't know about it. It can be said that we've been stealthy, but the Four Seasons Tower's men have been able to capture us accurately and drag us out one by one, and kill us. Hen Bieli sucked in a breath. Does the Four Seasons Tower really have such a formidable intelligence network in Tiantang City? What kind of level is this? Also, the Four Seasons Tower's men are killing like they've gone mad. Is this really normal? He looked at the yard where two of the Four Seasons Tower's experts were being besieged by the assassins. They were letting out shrill cries before they were smashed into pieces by the assassins who had appeared out of nowhere. Then, 3 men from the Four Seasons Tower dashed out from their rooms to fill in the gaps. However, this time was different from before. 4 people suddenly appeared on the rooftop. As soon as these 4 people appeared, it was as if a bloody hole had been torn in the air. Blood spurted everywhere in the seemingly empty night sky. Those were the assassins who had yet to make a move and were still in hiding. Those 4 people had already locked onto their positions and killed them. After this unforeseen event, the situation of the battle immediately changed. The Four Seasons Tower's countermeasure has changed. A sharp glint flashed in Hen Bieli's eyes as he ordered, "Change the strategy." His voice shook the night sky. All the assassins listened to his command and began to change their tactics. Whether they succeeded or not, Hen Bieli's command had already been embedded deep into the minds of these lone assassins in the martial world. The battle grew more and more intense, both sides being the same. The night that was supposed to be peaceful and tranquil had long been shattered by the massacre. Yun Xiaoyao, who was watching the battle from the sidelines, had long given his orders. Yutong's official military is not to intervene within 10,000 feet of this place. Everyone, carry out your duties and do not move. Those who disobey will be beheaded. Let them fight each other to their deaths. It would be best if all of them were dead. Even if the masterful experts behind the scenes were all dead, then, it would be even better. It was the same night. Ling Xiaozui carried a person on his back, his body surrounded by a piercing sword light as he soared into the sky and streaked across the sky. Beside him was Du Guchou, who was similarly enraged. Feng Xianga was a step slower for some reason. After about a quarter of an hour, he followed suit. They were headed in different directions. The 3 experts, 2 in front and 1 behind, were rushing to an unknown location. At the top of Spirited Breeze Mountain. 2 silhouettes, one in the light and the other in the dark, watched the night sky and waited quietly. I'm sorry for the late update. However, the 2 plots are intertwined today, so it's indeed difficult to write. I've only managed to write this after deleting it 2 to 3 times. I hope everyone won't mind. Today is Chief Lazy Ocean's birthday. I'm sorry to wish my brother a late birthday, but I still hope that he can receive my blessing. Brother, I wish you a happy birthday. Chapter 6:12. Do you think they'll come? Of course they'll come. No one in this world can counter the cycle of 4 seasons palm. Whether they make the exchange or not, they'll definitely come. Is there a possibility of a backlash? Of course there's a possibility. They won't truly believe us. In fact, when have we ever truly believed anyone? They'll definitely come, but their purpose isn't important to us. The black-robed man smiled faintly. Let's leave it at that for now. At least for now, we're still the ones in control. All we need to do now is wait. That's all. The other man said, Ling Xiaozui and Du Guchou are known as the unrivaled experts. If, Mr. Nian said faintly, so what if they're the unrivaled experts? Have the 2 of us ever feared anyone in this world? He smirked coldly. The unrivaled expert is but a title we've created. What does it matter? The other man guffawed, the confidence in his voice evident. It was obvious that he did not care about the title of unrivaled expert. Suddenly, a sword howl that sounded like a thunderclap resounded in the sky. A ray of sword light pierced through the clouds like a dragon and shot down. The sword light appeared in the sky out of nowhere. Even those who had been paying attention to the sky could not see how the sword light had appeared. It seemed to have existed since the beginning of time. It had always been there. It was only now that it revealed its ferocity and murderous intent. Once it appeared, however, it was impossible to defend against. One could only extend one's neck and wait to be slaughtered. The descent of the sword light caught the attention of the two men on the mountaintop. Both of their expressions turned grim at the same time. Both of them realized who had arrived. The sword light tore a hole through the clouds in the sky with a loud boom, revealing a sky full of twinkling stars. A man in green descended under the starry sky. His robes fluttered in the wind, like an immortal who had suddenly descended to the mortal realm. Just as the green-clothed man floated down, another gray-clothed man also descended without a sound and followed closely behind the green-clothed man. If one did not see it with their own eyes, they would not even be able to sense it with their divine senses. How many people like him were there in the world? Ling Xiaozue. Dugu Chou. Two great experts joined hands. He came and landed on the top of the mountain. Mr. Nian, come out. Ling Xiaozue let out a long howl, his voice reverberating in the air. An elegant chuckle could be heard from the shadows. Mr. Nian, who was dressed in black, strolled out as if he had opened a portal in space. He said faintly, "Brother Ling, I apologize for not coming out to greet you. Have you made up your mind?" Ling Xiaozue said faintly, "I'll give you Heaven's Inquisition if you want him, but you have to come with me to save my little brother." Before his words echoed in the air, he tossed the skeletal Gu Chaoyang at Mr. Nian's feet. Gu Chaoyang looked aggrieved, disbelief written all over his skeletal face. His cultivation base was probably sealed. Not only was he unable to move, he could not even speak a word. Mr. Nian's gaze flickered as he shifted. Not only did he not step forward to check, but he moved further away from Gu Chaoyang instead. He said softly, "Brother Ling, you can't possibly not know who Brother Gu Chaoyang is. Then, allow me to ask, what is your relationship with that little brother of yours?" Ling Xiaozue snorted and said, "His relationship with me has nothing to do with you. What you should do now is to quickly check if this fellow is the real person, complete this deal, and then follow me to save him. Are you that free?" Mr. Nian still did not check. Instead, he took a step back and sneered, "To make you, Ling Xiaozue, make such a huge sacrifice and even give up on Heaven's Inquisition, to put it lightly, you've betrayed your friend. To put it more seriously, you've missed a great opportunity for yourself. How can I not get to the bottom of such a huge matter?" Ling Xiaozue replied coldly, "Heaven's Inquisition has never been my friend. Little brother Yun Yang, on the other hand, is my opportunity. That's it." An eerie smile hung on Mr. Nian's face. "Ling Xiaozue, do you think I'll believe you?" Ling Xiaozue said faintly, "I don't care if you believe me or not. I'll only swear here and now that if you don't go today and my little brother dies, then, from today onwards, I'll kill every Four Seasons Tower member I see. Do you think I don't dare to do so?" He looked at Mr. Nian coldly. "I've done something like this once many years ago. I stopped because of sentiments. Today, I can continue because of sentiments." Dugu Chou, who was standing aside, said coldly, "Count me in. I can partner with you once to go against the Four Seasons Tower. While the Four Seasons Tower's top executives can fight the others, I believe they can be easily killed." Mr. Nian's pupils shrunk. "Are you threatening me?" Ling Xiaozue lifted his gaze as sharp as a sword. "Why? You can coerce and blackmail, but I can't threaten you in return? Mr. Nian let out a long howl and guffawed. Of course you can. It's just that it's been too long since I've been threatened, especially by an expert like Brother Ling. This is truly the first time in many years. It's refreshing. Ling Xiaozue said coldly, I don't wish to argue with you anymore. You were the one who proposed the exchange of men at Spirit Breeze Mountain within 3 days. Now that we're here and we've given in, you're evading and delaying it again and again. What can I do even if I threaten you? What should I do? What? You can only accept my threat obediently. Mr. Nian laughed and said, if threats are effective, why do you need to capture Heaven's Inquisition for the exchange? It's the same threat. Will the effect be different? Ling Xiaozui's heart skipped a beat. Mr. Nian was an intelligent man indeed. He had grasped this flaw accurately. There are things a gentleman should and shouldn't do. I have my reasons for what I do. Do I have the obligation to explain to you? Ling Xiaozui's gaze turned sharp. Cut the nonsense. I only have one question for you now. Are you not going to abide by our previous agreement? Mr. Nian snorted, a tinge of hesitation appearing in his gaze for the first time. In all fairness, since he had already caught a glimpse of the illogical aspects of the other party's actions, he should continue following the clues. After all, Ling Xiaozui's current choice was too unexpected. Even if he was forced to do so, he should not have given in so easily. Even if he cared too much about Yun Yang and experienced the twists and turns just now, he should have been more forceful. As Mr. Nian thought about it, he felt a sense of relief. As the saying went, a man needed his dignity and a tree needed its bark. Ling Xiaozue, Du Guchou, and Feng Xiang'e could not dispel his cycle of 4 seasons palm. It was already a stain on his record, and it was a foregone conclusion that he would be at a disadvantage. While the so-called coercion was reasonable, it required Yun Yang's life as the wager. A single misstep would cost him his life. Naturally, it was the worst plan. Otherwise, he would not have brought Gu Chaoyang here to exchange for the antidote. At the same time, the combined threat of Ling Xiaozue and Du Guchou was something that even Mr. Nian had to be wary of. Looking at Ling Xiaozue, who looked like he was about to start a fight at the slightest disagreement, Mr. Nian could not help but feel apprehensive. Perhaps Heaven's Inquisition, Gu Chaoyang, was truly restrained. Chapter 613. With this thought in mind, Mr. Nian looked at Gu Chaoyang, who was curled up on the ground, unable to move. With a wave of his hand, a sharp gust of energy landed squarely on Gu Chaoyang. With a low grunt, Gu Chaoyang was sent flying 50 to 60 feet away like a rubber ball. A bloody hole appeared on his arm as blood gushed out. Then, he fell back to the ground with a thud. 99% of Mr. Nian's attention was still focused on Ling Xiaozue and Du Guchou's reactions, but he saw that both of them were unmoved, as if they were waiting to see what would happen next. Mr. Nian was even more assured now. With a scoff, he said, "This is a serious matter. I have to be cautious. How do I know that the both of you aren't working together to trick me? If I don't act cautiously, wouldn't it be an injustice if I were to die from your ploy?" Ling Xiaozue snorted angrily. "I asked you to check just now. You were the one who didn't move, causing unnecessary trouble one after another. Now, you're acting so sarcastic. Others may fall for it, but I, Ling Xiaozue, won't fall for it." Mr. Nian snorted and hollered, "Retreat another 100 feet." With an additional 100 feet of distance between them, Mr. Nian's cultivation base would allow him to react in time even if he was ambushed. It was a safe distance where he could attack or defend himself. Ling Xiaozue said faintly, "I'm warning you for the last time. Check quickly. If you delay any further with your excuses, I'll only assume that you're stalling for time. By then, we'll fight to the death." Mr. Nian replied coldly, "As long as you, Ling Xiaozue, don't play any tricks with me, I won't go back on my word. I only want Gu Chaoyang. That brat's life is worthless to me. Ling Xiaozui snorted and retreated together with Du Guchou, retreating 100 feet away. At the same time, Mr. Nian unleashed another gust of energy, enveloping Gu Chaoyang in a dense and continuous manner. Using his cultivation method to check, he confirmed at once that all of Gu Chaoyang's meridians were indeed locked. He could not even move his eyelids or speak a word. He was like a lamb at the slaughter, and he didn't have the slightest ability to resist. Mr. Nian was still worried, so he went a step further to check Gu Chaoyang's Dantian and Sea of Qi. It was only when he realized that it was also unharmed that he was relieved and said faintly, "I've confirmed Brother Ling's sincerity in the transaction. I'll go with you now. Only when we return what we borrow, buy what we sell, can we be even." As he spoke, he flicked his finger. An even more massive force enveloped Gu Chaoyang. He sealed all the meridians in Gu Chaoyang's body in an unusually meticulous manner with his unique mystical energy. It was only then that Gu Chaoyang's ability to speak was restored. He said with a smile, "Brother Gu, I bet you didn't expect us to meet again so soon." Gu Chaoyang first glared at him hatefully before his gaze turned into indescribable sorrow and desolation. He chuckled bitterly and said, "Now that things have come to this, I have nothing more to say. Mr. Nian, I only hope that you can spare some time to talk to me after you send me there. That's all I ask for." Mr. Nian replied with a grin, "Of course. Brother Gu, you and I both know that it's not time for you to die yet. I'll definitely talk to you a little more after this. I won't let you have any other thoughts." Before his words echoed in the air, he kicked Gu Chaoyang. A gust of wind lifted Gu Chaoyang up and sent him somewhere in the dark forest. Even now, Mr. Nian was still cautious, guarding against any possibility of accidents. He did not come into contact with Gu Chaoyang's body, but sent the latter directly to where his partner was. This was to ensure that he was in perfect condition, without any carelessness or loopholes, so that he would be invincible. Almost at the same time, a silhouette flashed in the dark. A thick voice said, "Catch it." Ling Xiaozui and Du Guchou did not waste any more words. They sprung up and stood in the air, their voices growing impatient as they said coldly, "What are you waiting for? The people over there can't wait any longer." Mr. Nian nodded. Suddenly, a doubt crept into his heart. "Since you're in such a hurry to save him, why didn't you bring the brat along?" Ling Xiaozui was enraged. His tone was eerie as he said, "Don't you know what you've done? Don't you know that it's already the third day? Don't you know what state his body is in now? If it weren't for Feng Xiang'e helping to prolong his life, how much of his lifespan would he have left even if you saved him? Are you flaunting your unique mystique that no one can cure by asking this now?" Mr. Nian thought about it and realized that he had indeed gone overboard with his words. Judging from Yun Yang's condition when he was struck that day, it was several times worse than the usual victims. Now that he did not have much time left, it was normal that his life was hanging by a thread. Even if he had a great cultivator like Feng Xiang'e helping to prolong his life, his physical condition would not be any better. He was probably no different from a decaying zombie. Moving here was indeed a huge risk. It was no wonder that Feng Xiang'e did not show up this time. That was how it should have been. Mr. Nian laughed and said, "It's better to be safe than sorry. It's my fault for making Brother Ling wait so anxiously. Come, let's go now. The cycle of 4 seasons palm is treacherous, but as long as it's performed before the deadline, it'll only take a few days of the victim's lifespan. It won't be much of a hindrance." As he spoke, he floated up like a cloud. Hovering in the air, he stood 300 feet away from Ling Xiaozui and Du Guchou. "Let's go." It was obvious that Mr. Nian's wariness and vigilance had not diminished much until now. He had maintained a safe distance. Ling Xiaozui snorted. With a flash of his sword, he took the lead and was already thousands of feet away. Dugu Chou followed closely behind, looking equally impatient as he hurried forward. Mr. Nian laughed and caught up to them, saying, "The cycle of 4 seasons Palm's lifespan is 4 days. There's still some leeway. There's no need to rush." As he spoke, he had already come to Ling Xiaozui's left. With a faint smile, he said, "With our speed, this trip to Tiantang City will only be..." Ling Xiaozui was still in the lead, his speed not decreasing. He replied casually, "We're all cultivators. How can we not know the pros and cons of this? Taken by your poison, one's lifespan will deplete rapidly. Even with the antidote, it'll be difficult to recover the lost lifespan. The sooner the treatment is performed, the sooner the loss can be prevented. Of course, the sooner the better. A long night is fraught with trouble." Mr. Nian maintained a high level of vigilance. "You're right. I can't afford to offend this young brother who Ling Xiaozui is so concerned about. From now on, no one from the 4 Seasons Tower will dare lay a finger on him." Mr. Nian was well versed in this principle. How could he not know that although they had gained the upper hand today, they had unavoidably offended Ling Xiaozui? Even if Yun Yang was saved, it was inevitable that his lifespan would be depleted. Thus, he simply promised a guarantee. Of course, this also implied that if Ling Xiaozui were to seek trouble with the 4 Seasons Tower in the future, the first to bear the brunt would most likely be the young brother whom Ling Xiaozui was concerned about. Both of them flew forward as they spoke. In the blink of an eye, they were already thousands of feet away. Both of them were like immortals riding on clouds, sprinting side by side in the air. Ling Xiaozui was still urging them, "Faster, faster." Ling Xiaozui had already unleashed his movement skill with all his might, increasing his speed to the maximum. Mr. Nian chuckled. "Don't worry. Although the cycle of 4 seasons palm is a hindrance, as long as the treatment is done appropriately, there won't be any hidden dangers. Furthermore, Feng Xiang'e is there to prolong his life. I guarantee that it won't harm your young brother's life." Despite saying so, he still sped up. With the acceleration, Mr. Nian's heart skipped a beat as if something was amiss, but he could not pinpoint what it was. Turning his head, he was shocked. "Where's Dugu Chou?" Dugu Chou, who had been following beside him, had vanished without a trace. Mr. Nian did not even know when he had disappeared. Chapter 6:14. Mr. Nian's heart skipped a beat. "Where's Dugu Chou?" It was then that Mr. Nian turned around abruptly. Sword energy and dragon roars came from beside him like rolling thunder. Ling Xiaozui's voice, which had turned distant, rang out abruptly. "In the battle many years ago, there was no clear winner or loser. It's inevitable that there's some regret in our hearts. Today is the right time. Come, Mr. Nian, let me witness the true capabilities of the 4 Seasons Tower's supreme leader." Mr. Nian was enraged. "Ling Xiaozui, what do you mean?" Ling Xiaozui's faint smile fell into Mr. Nian's eyes along with the thunderous sword light. "Nothing else. I just want to cut off one of your arms. That's all. That's all." The sword energy was like a rainbow, its light blotting out the sky. The sword wind howled, shielding the wind and clouds in the sky. It was a full-force attack. Mr. Nian's body flickered as he moved backward swiftly. It was obvious that he did not wish to be entangled and intended to extricate himself. In spite of this, Ling Xiaozui had already made up for it. His sword energy was like maggots in one's bones, following him relentlessly. One misstep and he would be doomed eternally. "Mr. Nian, it's better to let go of the thought of reuniting. Dugu Chou has been gone for a long time. Your partner is probably dead by now. What you should do now is to be patient and stay with me here for a long time." Mr. Nian's thunderous roar shook the heavens. His warning was clear. "Don't waste your energy. Even if he can hear you, it's useless. He can't be distracted. You, on the other hand, might be the first to die if you're distracted. Ling Xiaozui guffawed. Come, come. Look at my soaring 13 swords. How does it compare to the past? Realization struck Mr. Nian. Gu Chaoyang isn't restrained? Ling Xiaozui howled, his sword light turning into a mountain of swords. Of course. Mr. Nian was burning with anxiety. If Gu Chaoyang wasn't restrained, his partner, who was carrying Gu Chaoyang, would be completely defenseless. Under such circumstances, if he were to be ambushed, moreover, Duguchou and Feng Xianga were beside him, why wasn't he restrained? He had checked it a few times. The more he thought about it, the more anxious he became. With a thunderous roar, he attacked with all his might, wanting to shake off Ling Xiaozui's entanglement. However, Ling Xiaozui attacked with all his might as well. His sword light weaved into a dragnet, preventing Mr. Nian from escaping. With an expert like Ling Xiaozui holding them back, it was impossible to escape without paying a price. Mr. Nian's roar was thunderous. He was so furious that his guts were about to explode, but he could only accompany Ling Xiaozui to waste time. There was no way he could escape. On the other side, a man dressed in black was carrying Gu Chaoyang with one hand as he sprinted through the wilderness. His speed was incredibly fast, comparable to Ling Xiaozui's highest movement skill. Perhaps it was out of instinct to be cautious, but he had chosen to travel along the more secluded paths. However, just as he was about to climb over a mountain, there was a loud rumble in front of him. The entire cliff in front of him collapsed without warning. A white-haired and white-bearded figure suddenly appeared, put old Gu down. The man in black chuckled. Feng Xianga, this is the choice you've made. Are you going to go back on your word and take it all? Feng Xianga retorted angrily, there are things that a gentleman should do and not do. How can I be someone like Ling Xiaozui who ignores morality? As long as you put old Gu down, we'll still mind our own business. Otherwise, let's fight here. The mysterious man guffawed. With just you? It was at this moment that Gu Chaoyang, who was held in his hand and could no longer move, suddenly sprang up to attack. Both his hands and legs struck at the same time with all his might, like a thunderbolt. Seeing that the change was imminent, the mysterious man was already on guard. However, most of his attention was placed on Feng Xianga and the surrounding land. Feng Xianga's ability was formidable, but he was still insignificant. What he was concerned about was whether there would be other helpers. However, he would never guard against Gu Chaoyang, who was immobilized in his hand. Not only had Mr. Nian checked on this, but he had also done so repeatedly. He had even added a layer of his own unique restriction. How could Gu Chaoyang suddenly move under the layers of restriction and even launch an attack with all his might? The sudden turn of events caught the mysterious man off guard. There was no way he could defend himself. Finally, he unleashed his cultivation base and reacted swiftly. As he roared, he flung Gu Chaoyang away, widening the distance between the two of them. As he moved, 3 shadows appeared. It was a pity that Gu Chaoyang was too close to him. No matter how the mysterious man reacted, the desperate attack still landed squarely on him. With a soft thud, the 2 shadows at the front shattered without any room for resistance. The mysterious man staggered from the palm strike and spat out a mouthful of blood. Cracking sounds could be heard from his body, a few of his bones had been broken somewhere. Gu Chaoyang, Feng Xianga, both of you are dead meat. The mysterious man roared in anger and hatred. With a long howl, Gu Chaoyang stretched his body and stood in the air, saying faintly, death is an ending that no one can avoid. It's just that you're fated to not see our death because you're the only one who's going to die today. Before Gu Chaoyang's words echoed in the air, another sword light fell from the sky like a thunderbolt. A cold voice spoke, not bad, not bad. Are you really going to die today? Shocked, the mysterious man looked towards the source of the voice. All he saw was a man dressed in grey flying through the air with a sword in his hand. Like a divine dragon, the man sliced through the night sky and flew towards him. It was Dugucho. Had he not left? How could the man in black not know that he had fallen into a trap? With a roar, he was about to flee. Facing Dugucho, Feng Xiang, and Gu Chaoyang's joint attack, it was enough to kill anyone in this world. It was too dangerous. If he had been any slower, he would have lost his life. It was a pity that the white-haired and white-bearded Feng Xiang was unwilling to let him go, attacking with all his might. Gu Chaoyang had already brandished his purple jade flute, attacking with all his might. There was Feng Xiang in front, Dugucho behind, and Gu Chaoyang by his side. 3 pinnacle experts attacked with all their might, working together to kill the culprit who was the bane of their existence. All 3 of them knew very well that this mysterious man before them was a pinnacle expert who was on the same level as them. He was also a dangerous character. Any negligence or underestimation could lead to an irreversible outcome. Since the 3 of them had decided to attack, they had to make this person stay here forever. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. The mysterious man let out a long howl, his voice echoing hundreds of miles away. With a flash of his black robe, a measuring ruler appeared in his hand. Taking a deep breath, he hollered, all right, let me try the combined might of the 3 pinnacle experts. Waves of air billowed as he charged straight at Feng Xiang. Chapter 6:15. Although the 4 of them were of the same level and the difference in their cultivation base was limited, there was a real gap between them. Dugucho, Ling Xiaozue, Feng Luo, and Mr. Nian were the ones who were truly of the same level. Their abilities were more or less equal. It was difficult to tell who was better in a one-on-one fight. As for Heaven's Inquisition, Gu Chaoyang, while he was also of the same level, he was unavoidably weaker. Moreover, his main cultivation path was not focused on offense. If they were to fight in a real fight, Feng Luo was confident that he could take him down within 300 moves. Feng Xiang's cultivation base was a level lower and he was not known for his combat prowess. It would be his limit if he could exchange 100 moves with Feng Luo. Therefore, Feng Xiang was the weakest link in the enemy's encirclement. As long as Feng Luo could break through his blockade, he could leave with ease. On the other hand, if he could not even break through this link, then he would be in real danger today. Therefore, he immediately came up with a strategy to attack Feng Xiang with all his might. He did not seek to kill the enemy but to break out of the encirclement. The mysterious man in black charged over like a mad tiger. Feng Xiang, who was the first to receive the attack, felt the immense pressure. In spite of it, Feng Xiang grasped the other party's mentality instantly. The current situation was obvious. Their combat power was far superior to the other party's and the encirclement was complete. The other party was injured and his combat strength had been reduced, but his actual combat strength was still above Feng Xiang's. He possessed the ability to kill Feng Xiang. His aggressive attack and murderous intent was to force Feng Xiang to give way. As long as Feng Xiang retreated, the other party could escape immediately. With the other party's cultivation base, even if he was injured, it would be impossible for Feng Xiang to kill him here as long as he escaped the encirclement. He could only let him escape. Feng Xiang's thoughts raced as he sucked in a deep breath. His entire body glowed as he faced the attack head-on without avoiding it. The only thing he could do now was to face it head-on without dodging. Feng Xiang was a seasoned man. Now that he knew the crux of the situation, how could he back out? Since he dared to pick him as the breakthrough, he would slap him in the face. He would let him know what it meant to be high and mighty, what it meant to be the end of the seas and the crumbling of rocks, and what it meant to be indisputable. In fact, the moment Feng Xiang made the decision to fight with brute force, a strange thought flashed across his mind. Heaven's Inquisition obviously held a deep grudge against the Four Seasons Tower, so it was hard to change their stance. Ling Xiaozui had a grudge against the Four Seasons Tower in the past as well, and now that the Four Seasons Tower had plotted against Yun Yang with such a venomous move, he would have to settle old and new scores together. There was also Du Guchou. Due to the previous sword trial, his stance was also on the opposing side. Heaven's Inquisition had already made it clear, haven't I found two helpers? The two helpers, as the name suggested, referred to Du Guchou and Ling Xiaozui. In this way, this matter had nothing to do with him at all. He could completely stay out of it and walk the open road alone. But now, why the hell was he the one who was putting in the effort? As Feng Xiang'e attacked with all his might, he felt that he had been terribly wronged. What was this old man fighting for? Especially now, he was basically gambling with his life. How could he explain this? No matter how much Feng Xiang'e cursed inwardly, he still gave it his all. The situation was clear now. The siege had been set. If the man in black really broke through from Feng Xiang'e's side, Feng Xiang'e would not be able to withstand the Four Seasons Tower's revenge, let alone Gu Chaoliang and the other two. Today, he had to make this bastard stay. With a loud bang, the result of the battle was revealed. The mysterious man in black's desperate attack did not pale in comparison to Ling Xiaozui or Du Guchou's full-force attack. Even though Feng Xiang'e had given it his all, he was still flung away like a kite with a broken string after a loud cry. While he was still in the air, he was already coughing up blood. It was obvious that he had suffered a severe injury. In spite of this, the mysterious man in black did not fare any better. He had just been ambushed by Heaven's Inquisition and was severely injured. Not only were his internal organs injured, two of his ribs were broken as well. Although Heaven's Inquisition's combat strength could not compare to Ling Xiaozui, Du Guchou, or Mr. Nian, he was still an expert of the same level. He was also a top-notch expert in this world. Anyone who had been ambushed by his full-force attack when they were defenseless would not have been able to bear it. In order to break through the siege, the mysterious man in black had attacked with all his might. His aura was impressive, and it was difficult for ordinary people to face him head-on. However, deep down, he was hoping for a fluke, hoping that Feng Xiang'e would be wise enough to protect himself so that he could escape. It was a pity that his desperate counterattack had the opposite effect, causing Feng Xiang'e to face him head-on without backing down. Feng Xiang'e was not a mediocre person. How could the phantom physician god of wine, who had lived for centuries, survive until now without a certain level of ability? Feng Xiang'e's all-out attack had worsened the mysterious man's injuries. His already damaged internal organs were churning as if the world had been turned upside down. His vision darkened as he spat out a mouthful of blood. The sound of the wind grew stronger. Du Guchou's attack was only a hair's breadth away from reaching him. The mysterious man in black stumbling form halted abruptly before he danced in the air like a willow catkin. It was as if he was not affected by the force, but it was also as if he had gone along with Du Guchou's attack and used it to escape. However, how could Du Guchou's attack be deflected and redirected so easily? The man in black, who was struck once more, spat another mouthful of blood. However, the heaven-measuring ruler in his hand suddenly emitted thousands of rays of light. Countless rays of golden light, which were as thin as rays of light, suddenly shot out and instantly covered the entire space within a radius of several hundred feet. Sky-piercing golden gleam. Feng Xiang'e, Du Guchou, and Heaven's Inquisition cried out in unison. Your Liang Canghai. I can't believe that the eccentric talent of the generation who traversed both the legal and illegal worlds and terrorized the world has now become a shady character of the Four Seasons Tower. Feng Xiang'e wiped away the blood at the corner of his lips and stood shakily, unable to hide the shock in his eyes. Liang Canghai let out a long howl and completely disregarded the fact that his identity that he'd concealed for a long time had suddenly been exposed, and he flew out swiftly like an arrow. Since his identity had been exposed, there was no need to say anything more. His priority was to survive. The sky-piercing golden gleam. Back then, Liang Canghai had used this heaven-measuring ruler to defeat all his opponents in the world and build his reputation. However, compared to himself, the heaven-measuring ruler in his hand was much more popular. Other than being a mystical weapon, it was also one of the top mystical hidden weapons in the martial world. The heaven-measuring ruler was made up of countless fine golden filament needles. The so-called sky-piercing golden gleam was a manifestation of the heaven-measuring ruler's characteristics. The golden filament needles that made up the heaven-measuring ruler were almost weightless, so when they were assembled into a ruler, they were as light as a feather. However, the golden filament needles had a peculiar curve. Once they pierced through a person's skin, they could drill into the person's body through the bloodstream. It was difficult to expel. Those who were struck, no matter how impressive their cultivation base was, would not be able to escape death. Even Liang Canghai himself was powerless against such an injury. That was why the martial world called it the poison golden gleam back then. However, just as Liang Canghai's reputation was growing and his name was known throughout the continent, this person had mysteriously disappeared. To this day, no one had seen this person for at least hundreds of years. Everyone thought that he was long gone. Chapter 6:16. Dugu Cho hollered and swung the sword in his hand. A giant whirlpool appeared in midair. All the golden rays were sucked into the whirlpool like moths flying into a flame, followed by a loud tremor. It was apparent that Dugu Chao's move was appropriate. Not only had he blocked the golden rays, he had also exchanged a blow with Liang Canghai through the air. The golden rays reeled back at once, flying towards Liang Canghai's back. Although Dugu Cho had managed to deflect the sharpness of the heaven-measuring golden rays, he could not help but suffer a considerable amount of impact, causing him to falter. Liang Canghai did not wait for the golden rays to return. He turned to the left and attacked again, meeting Gu Chaoyang's palm strike head-on. The outcome of this exchange was obvious. Liang Canghai, who had been repeatedly injured, was sent flying by Gu Chaoyang's palm strike. That was not right. Instead of saying that Liang Canghai was sent flying by Gu Chaoyang's palm, it was more accurate to say that he had used the counterforce of the collision to somersault and retreat. His landing point was already out of the trio's encirclement. If it were not for a ray of sword light that came to Liang Canghai's path of retreat, Liang Canghai might have really escaped. That's right, an overwhelming sword chi filled with melancholy and ecstasy flew over like a long dragon, arriving first at Liang Canghai's target. The chilling sword chi then enveloped Liang Canghai's body. Liang Canghai cried out, the heaven-measuring ruler that had just returned to his hand flew out of his grasp. The heaven-measuring ruler that had left his grasp met the awe-inspiring sword chi head-on. Both of them engaged in the most extreme head-on collision without any tricks. Although the heaven-measuring golden rays had been renowned for a long time and was a rare divine weapon, it was mostly because of its unique material and focused more on its lethality. Resistance was not its forte. If it had been an ordinary battle, it might have been able to hold its ground, but now that Liang Canghai's combat strength had been greatly reduced due to the consecutive injuries he had sustained, in addition to the hurried counterattack, the mystical chi he had infused into the heaven-measuring ruler was, at most, 20% of his usual strength. How could he be lucky enough to face the unusually strong sword chi head-on? With a muffled poof, this unique elite weapon, the heaven-measuring ruler, whose name shook the world, became golden powder that filled the sky, becoming dust in the world. Liang Canghai let out a heart-wrenching cry, followed by a miserable groan as a hole appeared on his shoulder. Not only had Dugu Chao's heartless severing sword shattered his weapon, it had also pierced through his shoulder. Puff! Gu Chaoyang appeared out of nowhere and landed a solid blow on Liang Canghai's back. Liang Canghai grunted again, falling to the ground like a kite with its string snapped. When he landed, he staggered twice, almost losing his footing. The shadow above them fell, but Dugucho did not stop his pursuit. Sword light rained down from the sky like a downpour. Gu Chaoyang did not slack off either, launching a close-range attack. All sorts of attacks came at him, each one lethal and lifeless. Only Feng Xiang'e stood slightly further away, adjusting his breathing with his eyes closed. His presence was extremely weak. It was not that he did not want to join in the battle, but he had taken the brunt of Liang Canghai's desperate attack to break out of the encirclement just now. He had almost perished on the spot after taking it head-on. It was already a feat that he could still stand. He could no longer intervene in this battle. In spite of this, the contribution he had given was sufficient. Even if there were only Dugucho and Gu Chaoyang now, it was enough to make Liang Canghai unable to escape. Liang Canghai gritted his teeth. His body was like a nail to the ground as he defended himself with all his might, trying his best not to fall. After a series of accidents, his injuries had become severe to a certain extent. He no longer had the intention to break out of the encirclement. With his current condition, it was impossible for him to escape on his own. His only hope was to hold on for as long as he could. After all, he believed that his partner would come to save him. The only person left on the other side was Ling Xiaozue. Although Mr. Nian might not be able to win, he was competent enough to rush to his aid. The crux of the matter was, would he be able to hold on until then? The two experts attacked with all their might, directly suppressing Liang Canghai within a radius of 3 zhang, rendering him unable to move. He was already in a completely passive situation, and this line of defense was still in the process of being compressed, on the verge of collapsing completely at any time. In spite of this, Liang Canghai gritted his teeth to urge himself, activating the arcane art of life potential to trigger his combat strength. Even when he spat out mouthfuls of blood essence, his complexion deteriorating at a speed visible to the naked eye, and half of his hair turning white in this short period of time, he was still holding his ground, trying his best to resist the two experts' killing blows. Liang Canghai looked as wretched as a ghost. Blood was gushing out of his orifices every second. The shoulder that had been injured by Dugu Jian earlier was completely shattered. Pale bone stubs were exposed on his back and chest, one of his legs was limping as he spat out blood continuously. However, he refused to give up. Despite being besieged by the two experts, he remained standing. He even took the opportunity to launch a desperate counterattack in exchange for a little bit of breathing space. A peerless expert was able to persevere in such a hopeless situation. This kind of indestructible tenacity was enough to shock everyone. Despite being in such a hopeless situation, Liang Canghai's gaze was still determined and calm, there was no trace of panic. Even if he felt like he was an arrow at the end of its flight, his mind was filled with boundless chaos, and it was even to the extent that it was difficult for him to focus his gaze. He knew very well that so long as he relaxed his last breath, then he would truly be finished. As long as he could hold on to his last breath, he was confident that he could hold on until his partner arrived. He had to hold on, he had to hold on. After another round of attack, Liang Canghai's hair had turned snow white, without the slightest luster. It was as if he had lost all signs of life, like a bunch of withered grass. In spite of this, Dugu Chao's sword light was still chilling as he attacked from 3 different directions. His intention to kill was clear. Liang Canghai, give up, Dugu Chao said faintly, with Ling Xiaozue holding your partner back, it's destined that he won't be able to come over. Liang Canghai's palms had long been reduced to skeletons after being tempered by the sword energy. There was not a shred of flesh on them, but they were still waving madly, generating a strong gust of wind and clanging sounds as they blocked all of Dugu Chao's incoming sword light. It wasn't that Liang Canghai didn't want to retort. In fact, he really wanted to retort and encourage himself. However, he knew that if he opened his mouth now, he wouldn't get any encouragement. He would only be venting his last breath. If that was the case, he would truly be finished. Chapter 6:17. For pinnacle experts like Ling Xiaozue, Mr. Nian, and Gu Chaoyang, the contents of their souls had long surpassed common sense. Even when their souls were shattered, as long as a shred of their remnant souls entered the cycle of reincarnation, there was a considerable chance for them to recapture the cultivation experience and state of mind of this lifetime. This was also the reason why Feng Xiang'e was shocked and Gu Chaoyang asked for the 3 lives and 3 lives tranquil wine. Drinking the 3 lives and 3 lives tranquil wine meant the destruction of one's soul. Now that Gu Chaoyang had offered to release Liang Canghai's soul into the cycle of reincarnation as long as Liang Canghai ended his own life, it could be said that he was giving Liang Canghai a way out. In spite of this, Liang Canghai did not answer. He countered in silence, continuing to resist Dugu Chao's sword energy attack. Dugu Chao said, "Why are you putting up such a futile struggle? If your partner could come, he would have done so long ago. Now that he's still in the future, he definitely won't be able to come." Facing Ling Xiaozue's all-out attack, unless he's willing to make a huge sacrifice. But will he pay such a price to save you? Gu Chaoyang continued, "Liang Canghai, you know yourself best. Are you still so sure that Mr. Nian will come back to save you? Forget it, I won't do anything anymore. Since you're a man, fight Dugu Chou alone. It's much more honorable for him to send you on your way than to be ganged up on and beaten to death." Listening to the mockery, Liang Canghai's counterattack did not diminish. Instead, it intensified, his throat could not help gurgling. He really wanted to spit on Gu Chaoyang's despicable old face and curse him with a finger pointed at his nose. King ambushed me the moment you came. First, you injured me, then the 3 of you ganged up on me, beating me until I was barely breathing, not much better than a dead man. Only then did you let me fight Dugu Chou alone. Gu Chaoyang was speechless. How can you be so shameless? In spite of this, he could not say it out loud. His vision was growing blurry as he felt himself falling deeper into an endless abyss. It was as if he would never reach the bottom. Dugu Chou glanced over as well and frowned. Why hadn't Ling Xiaozue let him go yet? Why didn't you follow the script? Did you really kill Mr. Nian? Right at this moment, a thunderclap resounded in midair, and it shook the heavens as a violet gold ray of light suddenly descended from the sky like a bolt of lightning. The momentum of this attack greatly exceeded the scope of everyone's imagination. Go all out, kill Liang Canghai. Dugu Chou shouted. Gu Chaoyang, who had just said that he would no longer attack, attacked again without hesitation. He attacked with all his might, as if he was going all out, afraid that he could not kill his target as soon as possible. Therefore, countless light curtains filled with boundless killing intent smashed down on Liang Canghai, who was already on the verge of collapse. However, a long roar shook the heavens in midair, and a figure rushed over under the shroud of saber lights, sword shadows, fists, and palms. Dang dang dang. It was Dugu Chao's sword that made a series of clangs as it seemed to have encountered some kind of weapon. Dugu Chou had to inject mystical qi into the sword again to stop himself from being flung away. Gu Chaoyang was in an even worse state. With a grunt, he somersaulted away. It was obvious that he had been sent flying by the person who had rashly intervened in the battle. Feng Xiang'e, who was slightly further away, opened his eyes abruptly. What he saw was a black-clothed, blood-stained silhouette landing abruptly. Then, with a twirl of one hand, countless rays of light shot out in all directions at once. Then, there was another loud explosion. Black fog spread with the explosion, shrouding 1,000 feet of land in an instant. It connected heaven and earth, blotting out the sun and the sky. A chilling voice spoke, "I will never forget everyone's kindness. There shall be reincarnation in this lifetime." Before the voice could echo in the air, a black shadow that was darker than the black fog soared into the sky, leaving the battle. Trying to leave? It won't be that easy. Not only did Dugu Cho soar with his sword, Gu Chaoyang was also waving his purple jade flute, turning into a ray of purple light as he pursued. Even Feng Xianga, who was resting on the side, attacked with all his might. Countless saber lights flashed and charged into the black fog. A low grunt came from the black fog, as if the person inside had been injured from the series of attacks. In spite of it, Gu Chaoyang and the other two had suffered a considerable counterattack as well. Gu Chaoyang was the first to spit a mouthful of blood and staggered hundreds of feet back. Dugu Cho grunted, his body swaying, but his sword did not strike again. As for Feng Xianga, he rolled away like a gourd due to the attack, looking extremely wretched. Just as the three of them were pushed back, the black silhouette in the thick fog soared up again. However, blood was still spurting from all over his body as he soared into the air and charged out of the thick fog. There was a person under his ribs, who else could it be but Liang Canghai? The bleeding silhouette twisted in the air, and with another deafening howl, he surged into the distance like a raging dragon, vanishing in the blink of an eye. Dugu Cho and the rest wanted to give chase, but it was already too late. It was then that Ling Xiaozui's voice came from midair. "Where do you think you're going? Stay!" A dazzling sword light that was like the sun appeared in the sky, illuminating hundreds of miles of mountains and rivers. A low grunt came from the other end before it was completely silent. A voice that was filled with resentment came from afar. "Good, good, very good. I'll remember what happened today." Ling Xiaozui descended slowly from the sky. Feng Xianga was lying on the ground, Gu Chaoyang was leaning against a broken tree trunk, and Dugu Cho was looking up. The 8 eyes of the 4 men exchanged glances, a smile playing at the corners of their lips. "If you didn't let him come over, we might have to kill Liang Canghai." Gu Chaoyang stood up shakily. Ling Xiaozui coughed and said, "This can't be helped. With Mr. Nian's cautiousness, he'll be suspicious if we let him go too easily. Therefore, I've only made him spit blood from his heart twice." This price shouldn't have reached his limit. Dugu Cho sighed and said, "Old Gu's words were indeed exaggerated. Even if Mr. Nian had come a little later, I think Liang Canghai would still have been able to hold on. An expert of this level won't collapse so easily. With the 3 of us working together, victory is assured and we have the upper hand. However, the other party is preserving his life at all costs, not hesitating to unleash the potential of his life force, soul, and soul just to stay alive. His will to live is unshakable. Old Gu's psychological tactic of letting his soul reincarnate is completely ineffective. It's just a waste of breath." Dugu Cho said, "Therefore, perhaps Liang Canghai would really be killed by us if we were a little later, but not now." Ling Xiaozui nodded. It was basically the same as what he had guessed. Just like what Dugu Cho had said, this was also the key to why the top experts in this world were harder to kill. Even if 3 experts of the same level were to besiege one person, the most they could do was gain the upper hand and victory was assured. However, to actually kill him was an entirely different matter. When it came to the brink of death, most people who were besieged would choose to unleash all of their potential to save their lives. Even if such potential and the source of life could not be replenished for many years or even a lifetime, they would not hesitate to do so. Only by staying alive could they talk about the future. What was in front of them was the key. On the contrary, the few people who had the upper hand would never adopt such a method. Their combined ability was far superior to the other party. Even if the other party were to put up a desperate resistance, they could still defeat the other party if they were to endure it. There was really no need to fight the other party head-on and cause both sides to suffer or even die. Therefore, under such a contrast, as long as the enemy fought with all his might, there was a high chance that he could escape. Take today's situation as an example. If Feng Xianga had retreated at the last minute, the so-called sure-kill situation would be a joke. What happens next depends on Brother Feng. Ling Xiaozui and the other 2 turned to look at Feng Xianga simultaneously. There were too many haters. The death of a family member could also be a reason for them to vent their anger. They said that they were making up excuses to ask for leave. I could only smirk coldly. When I, Feng Ling Tian, want to ask for leave, I never need a reason. What more to curse my own family? Chapter 618. Feng Xiang'e chuckled humorlessly and stood up shakily. His eyes were rolling back in his head as he said exasperatedly, "If the other party's ability was a notch higher, you'll have to go underground if you want to see me." Fear lingered in his heart. That was so close just now. I feel like my life is already at the gates of the King of Hell, and I've only gone for a spin inside. Dugu Chou and the other two chuckled, knowing how perilous Feng Xiang'e had been just now. Hurrying forward to curry favor, Gu Chaoyang took out a medicinal pill while Ling Xiaozui and Dugu Chou extended their hands in unison to help Feng Xiang'e heal. After a while, Feng Xiang'e caught his breath and said, all right. That's enough." As he spoke, he struggled to retrieve a strange bamboo tube that was entirely white in color from his embrace. Once the lid was opened, a small, snow-white snake slithered out and coiled itself around Feng Xiang'e's hand intimately. The trio was shocked to realize that the snake had been snow-white when it crawled out, but when it came to Feng Xiang'e's hand, it turned into the same color as Feng Xiang'e's hand. If they had seen it earlier, the trio might not have been able to tell that there was a snake on Feng Xiang'e's hand. Feng Xiang'e fed the snake a tiny, white pill and placed it beside the blood stain that Liang Canghai had spat out. The moment the little snake landed on the ground, the color of its body changed once again. In an instant, it became the same color as the ground. When it slowly crawled over and smelled the blood, its body returned to its snow-white color once again. It licked the blood. Then, a red line seeped into the snake's snow-white body. Then, the snake lifted its head and turned slowly, faster and faster. Finally, it headed towards the direction where Mr. Nian and Dugu Chou had left. "Go," Feng Xiang'e said softly. The small snake slowly crawled in a circle and suddenly jumped up. Then, it abruptly disappeared. There was no trace of him at all. The speed of its movement dumbfounded the three experts other than Feng Xiang'e, their eyes filled with disbelief. "Is it done?" "It's done." Feng Xiang'e was unperturbed. "My Xiao Bai has never failed in tracking in its life." The battle of the century outside Tiantang City was earth-shattering, but no one knew about it other than the 6 people involved. The commotion caused by such a great battle was not small and the location of the battle was not too far away from Tiantang City. Skilled cultivators should have noticed it. However, there was a great battle taking place in Tiantang City as well and it had not stopped even when dawn broke. As the only person who should have participated in the battle of the century but did not, Yun Yang had witnessed the entire battle in Tiantang City. It was hard to say who would emerge victorious in this battle. The Four Seasons Tower's experts were almost all dead or injured, while the assassins had suffered even more casualties. There was a thick layer of corpses on the ground. In the end, the 2 legendary assassins, Hen Bieli and Hong Zhan, led the experts under their command and finally forced out all of the Four Seasons Tower's forces. The war then entered the most extreme stage. Frost, Snow, and Sword, along with the Four Seasons Tower's 9 Dao realm experts, charged out like ferocious tigers. Hong Zhan and Hen Bieli felt immense pressure and headache at the same time. Based on individual cultivation base alone, the 2 of them, along with the 4 assistants from the Merciless Tower and Hall of Crimson Blade, could easily suppress any one of the Four Seasons Tower's 12 people. The assassins were not at a disadvantage when it came to the combination of their superior combat power. In spite of this, the actual battle could not be calculated in such a manner. The Four Seasons Tower's 12 superior cultivators were the main force of attack. They did not focus on a single point but launched a one-on-one attack. The 6 experts on the assassin's side were caught in a difficult situation. Both sides were well aware of each other's capabilities. When the Four Seasons Tower launched their final attack, 6 of the experts charged straight at Hen Bieli and the others. They did not seek to win, only to entangle the assassins and drag the battle on, leaving them with no time to spare. Snow, Frost, and Sword, as well as the other 3 men, charged into the group of assassins and began a massacre. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere as blood flowed like a river. With the cultivation base and capability of these 6 people, it was like a tiger entering a flock of sheep, facing an assassin whose ability was at least a realm lower than theirs. How could Hen Bieli not know what the other party was thinking? However, it was difficult to break out of this predicament in a hurry. Driven by his hatred, he let out a long howl and bellowed in rage, "Concourse of the underworld! Are you all here just to watch the show this time?" Initially, he had expected that once he spoke, he would be admitting defeat to the concourse of the underworld and would even owe them a huge favor. In addition, the concourse of the underworld had a deep grudge with the Four Seasons Tower, so it was only right for them to lend a helping hand. There was only a sliver of difference between victory and defeat. As long as a few of the concourse of the underworld's 10 court Yama kings made a move and slightly restrained Sword, Frost, Snow, and the others, while the 6 of them killed their opponents as quickly as possible, they could wipe out all of the Four Seasons Tower's men while avoiding a large number of casualties on their side. This was a method that was beneficial to both parties and themselves. The concourse of the underworld who had joined the battle could not have missed the crux of the matter. There was no reason for them not to do the same, especially now that they were the ones who had asked for help. In spite of this, not only did he not receive any response, the ghastly fog that had been shrouding the sky had vanished swiftly after a while. It had vanished. Countless assassins had even forgotten to fight, their mouths agape in shock. What kind of miracle was this? Hen Bieli and Hong Zhan could only feel a chill in their hearts as they witnessed the turn of events. The rage of being deceived and betrayed rose like a raging fire. The concourse of the underworld had come, but they had stood them up at this delicate juncture. It turned out that they had never intended to make a move. They were only here to watch the show, to watch the fight from the sidelines and reap the rewards. Realizing this, both of them were so enraged that they almost exploded on the spot. As the new generation of legends and legends in the world of assassins, when had they ever been toyed with so miserably in their lives? Amidst their agitation, the Four Seasons Tower's experts had seized the opportunity to pry into their flaws, putting them in a perilous situation. Both of them were experts of this world, after all. They quickly composed themselves and steadied their footing. Their cultivation base was more than a level higher than their opponents'. Otherwise, the instant of agitation just now would have turned the tables. Now that they had calmed down, they swiftly regained the upper hand. Their opponents were vigilant as well, changing their battle tactics back to their previous strategy of dragging the fight out. They would not fight the 2 of them head-on. Hen Bieli's thoughts raced as he came to a sudden realization. The concourse of the underworld's refusal to join the battle was in their best interest. The concourse of the underworld had been dealt a heavy blow by the Four Seasons Tower previously, leaving less than a tenth of its original strength. It was already on the decline, the title of the top assassin organization was no longer true. On the other hand, the Merciless Tower was the second largest assassin organization after the concourse of the underworld. This time, they had issued the ultimate token of the assassin world, the dictum of death. If they achieved a great victory in this ambush against the Four Seasons Tower, not only would the ranking of the assassin organizations be rewritten, it would also be a question whether the concourse of the underworld could still be ranked among the top assassin organizations. Chapter 619. Currently, the Four Seasons Tower's strategy was working. The assassins had suffered heavy losses, and the number of casualties was still increasing. Although such a situation would not affect the final outcome of the battle, because the final outcome would be the assassin's victory. The concourse of the underworld would be happy to see such a situation. If too many of the assassins who had come for the battle perished, the Merciless Tower and the Hall of Crimson Blade would no longer be credible. The dream of being the leader of the Assassin's world would only be a dream. Even if the Four Seasons Tower's experts were wiped out in the end, the Hall of Crimson Blade and the Merciless Tower would have to pay a considerable price. This was not even taking into account the Four Seasons Tower's subsequent revenge. Therefore, it was reasonable for the concourse of the underworld to retreat at the last minute. It was within their expectations, within reason. Thinking of this, Henbieli's hatred lessened. He quickly came to a conclusion: they had to eliminate the Four Seasons Tower's experts as soon as possible. In other words, they had to use their hidden trump card. If they were to delay any longer, they would lose everything tonight. Henbieli howled. With a flick of his wrist, a blood-red firework rose abruptly. However, as the blood-red firework was unleashed, Henbieli and Hongzhan's hearts were bleeding. This force was the last force they had hidden in the Merciless Tower and the Hall of Crimson Blade. It also included some high-level assassins they had recruited recently. It was truly their last trump card. Initially, Henbieli and Hongzhan had predicted that they would far surpass the Four Seasons Tower in terms of manpower and overall capability. With the help of a veteran like the concourse of the underworld, this trump card was only a contingency plan, the so-called killer's last resort. However, not only did the Four Seasons Tower's combat power exceed their expectations, their strategy was even more ingenious and targeted, causing the assassins' losses to far exceed their expectations. Furthermore, the concourse of the underworld had withdrawn at the last minute. The situation was dire. If they were to delay any longer, the assassins who had come for the battle might collapse first. Therefore, the only thing they could do now was to fill in the gaps and end the battle as soon as possible. However, once they thought of the losses they had incurred in this battle, the two leaders felt an unbearable pain in their hearts. Following the command, countless glints of saber light and sword shadows of various colors suddenly engulfed the night sky. Countless gray-clothed assassins appeared one after another. However, these figures that suddenly appeared were extremely strange and illusory. Following a series of explosions, smoke and dust filled the sky, and all of them disappeared into the night fog that suddenly rose. However, the killing intent that permeated the air instantly became many times stronger. From then on, the Four Seasons Tower's experts began to suffer casualties. Although the number of people summoned by the two major assassin organizations this time was not many, the quality was shockingly high. In terms of pure martial strength, almost every one of them had the tyrannical strength to establish their own sects in the outside world. Once these people intervened, the Four Seasons Tower's final strength that they relied on as a great wall was immediately suppressed. Moments later, casualties began to appear. Henbieli did not hold back either. Clad in green and wielding his sword, his body spun like the wind, sometimes to the east and sometimes to the west. His eyes glinted brilliantly as he launched an all-out attack on the Four Seasons Tower's remaining forces. Hongzhan naturally did not want to be outdone. The two of them, one on the left and one on the right, one on the south and one on the north, complemented each other and began a massacre. Yunyang, who was observing from the shadows, could not help frowning when he saw the scene. Based on the current situation, the Four Seasons Tower's defeat was set in stone. Snow, Frost, and Sword did not even have the chance to break out of the siege. If the stalemate continued, both sides' abilities would be completely unbalanced, and the three of them would definitely lose their lives in this battle. In fact, the three of them were already in dire straits. Venerable Lord Snow's white robe was already stained with blood, while Venerable Lord Sword had a piece of his scalp shaved off. Only Venerable Lord Frost was still alive. Yunyang lifted his head and looked at the wraith fog not far away before he retracted his gaze. Then, a few more cries rang out. Another 5 Four Seasons Towers experts had died a violent death. The assassins had only paid the price in this round of attacks, only 3 of them were severely injured. A moment later, another series of cries rang out. Hen Bieli and Hong Zhan had attacked aggressively, one from the south and one from the north, killing the other 4 experts from the Four Seasons Tower, other than the 3 venerable lords. Now, the Four Seasons Tower was left with only snow, frost, and sword. At this point, more than 100 assassins had revealed themselves. Countless cold gazes were focused on the 3 men who were on the verge of collapsing in the field. The battle had finally come to an end. However, in this battle, there were already more than 1,500 famous assassins who fell here forever. It was undoubtedly a huge number. However, this huge number of casualties was only exchanged for the lives of less than 200 men from the Four Seasons Tower. On the side of the assassins, although they had won this battle, they had actually lost. The gains did not make up for the losses. With a wave of his hand, Hen Bieli halted his attacks. His hawk-like eyes stared at Venerable Lord Snow and said, "Venerable Lord Snow, now that this battle has come to an end, this reputed one still has something that I don't understand. If I don't get to the bottom of this, I'll feel indignant. I wonder if Venerable Lord Snow can answer this reputed one at this last juncture?" Venerable Lord Snow coughed and chuckled bitterly. "A question that I don't understand? Indignant? That's great. Initially, I hated myself for not being able to kill you, and I couldn't help but die with a grudge. However, if I were to bury your puzzlement and let you be paranoid for the rest of your life, it would be a wonderful thing to do." Venerable Lord Sword and Venerable Lord Frost guffawed at the same time, not at all concerned about the current situation. Hen Bieli's gaze grew colder and colder, sharper and sharper. He said faintly, "It looks like the 3 venerable lords don't wish to answer." Venerable Lord Sword spat and lifted his neck, replying in disdain, "Answer you? Who do you think you are?" Hen Bieli nodded slowly, his murderous intent blazing as he uttered word by word, "Good, very good." With a wave of his hand, he commanded, "Kill." All the assassins moved at the same time. Boundless murderous intent engulfed the 3 venerable lords. It was at this moment that a piercing howl was heard. A deep voice spoke, "Over here." At the same time, a blinding light erupted in the yard, as if a sun had fallen into the yard. Assassins were more accustomed to the dark atmosphere, for it was the only way they could feel more secure. Now that they were exposed to such a strong light, they were blinded. Their vigilance was heightened as they shut their eyes instinctively, brandishing their weapons so that the wind and rain could not penetrate them. Their priority was to protect themselves. Snow, Frost, and Sword, Venerable Lord Frost, and Venerable Lord Sword were quick to react to the sudden change, charging out. Amidst the darkness, a vague silhouette appeared high in the sky. Its arms were raised, and the sound of wind breaking was incessant. Then, it was as if countless experts had attacked at the same time. Countless hidden weapons formed an impenetrable wall behind Snow, Frost, and Sword like a storm. Don't let the Four Seasons Tower's remnant escape. Hen Bieli was a veteran, so he was the quickest to react. He knew that if the 3 venerable lords were to escape unscathed, there would only be endless trouble. With a loud roar, he was about to give chase. Unexpectedly, an eerie laugh rang in the air. "Who's the remnant?" Before the voice could echo in the air, an exceedingly domineering force struck. Hen Bieli's eyes were still tearing up. He was only exerting himself to give chase. Amidst the sudden attack, he instinctively swung his sword in the direction of the sound of the wind. A crisp sound rang out. He didn't know what his sword had hit, but he saw thick smoke rising into the air. After the bright light, thick smoke engulfed the area. It was so dark that one could not even see their own fingers. When the smoke dissipated and the assassins looked over, all they could see was the galaxy, the moon and the sky, and the blood and broken limbs on the ground. The three venerable lords of the Four Seasons Tower were nowhere to be seen. They didn't even know who had saved them. "I'm so angry today. A close friend of mine came to our house. Before she came, I'd told her, 'Don't embarrass me later, don't speak so harshly. I'll remember it. My close friend is here. She's elegant and pretty. I've only taken a few more glances, been a little more attentive, and complimented her a little. Everything was done according to my wife's instructions. My wife was all smiles then, but after my close friend left, I was beaten up. I even have to sleep on the sofa tonight, I'm so angry.'" Chapter 620. They had mobilized so many men and paid such a heavy price, yet they had failed to capture the three most important people of the enemy. This battle could not even be considered a Pyrrhic victory. Hen Bieli seethed with anger. "Search. Even if we have to dig 3 feet into the ground, we must find these 3 people." Venerable Lord Sword and the other 2 men who had escaped from the death ordeal were rather dumbfounded, feeling lost. Their current objective was simple and brutal. Firstly, it was to avenge their brothers, and secondly, it was because they hated the Four Seasons Tower for using them to cultivate God's bones but not treating them as human beings. However, the 3 of them had never expected that they could actually cause such a great calamity in the martial world. While they had tried their best to gather the Four Seasons Tower's forces in Tiantang City without reservation, they would never have thought that the guards who had always followed their bosses would be willing to listen to their orders and participate in this battle. However, knowing the difference in the overall strength of the 2 sides, although they had arranged many preparations, and their tactics and strategies were very effective, the outcome of this battle had long been decided. The 3 of them did not even think that they would be able to survive in the end. They only thought about killing as many as they could, and killing as much of their opponents as possible. As long as they completed their strategy, they would have avenged their brothers. While they had lost the Four Seasons Tower's manpower, they had also caused trouble for the Four Seasons Tower. Even if they were to die in this catastrophe, they could still smile in the underworld. However, what the 3 of them did not expect was that the Four Seasons Tower's men they had recruited were all dead. The 2 top assassin organizations themselves and the assassins they had recruited suffered heavy losses, and the 3 of them had managed to escape at the last moment when they were at their wits' end. In the face of this result, the 3 of them felt as if they were in a dream. They could not believe this reality. In a hidden place, the 3 men who had yet to recover from their shock looked at each other. "Who saved us?" Venerable Lord Sword was rather puzzled. "Could we have a backup plan in Tiantang City? Why didn't I know about this?" The other 2 men were perplexed as well. Venerable Lord Sword's question was similar to theirs, it was just that Venerable Lord Sword had asked it first. "That's right, who saved us?" Even if the Four Seasons Tower had a backup plan, it was impossible to believe that they had saved them. The door opened. A purple-robed young master in a light coat walked in slowly with a smile on his face and an elegant demeanor. "Greetings, venerable ones. Young Master Yun. It's you?" The 3 venerable ones were shocked and they saw the person in front of them. They were confused and asked, "Why are you here?" These 3 men had always been entangled with Yun Yang. From the fated encounter of Venerable Lord Sword in the latter half of his life, to their reunion at the Fortress of Resilience, and even the recent provocation, it had all changed the trajectory of their destinies bit by bit. When it came to the former, Yun Yang had abided by the rules of the martial world and brought Venerable Lord Ice's last words to them. The trio already felt that they owed him a huge favor, so their fondness for each other skyrocketed. However, he had not expected Yun Yang to save the 3 of them in such a perilous situation when the 3 of them were facing all the assassins in the world. This debt of gratitude was a little too great. He had yet to repay the previous debt, and now he owed him a life-saving debt. He really didn't know how to deal with it. why can't it be me? Truth be told, who else in Tiantang City has such capability other than me? Yunyang smiled faintly. The three of them sat down in bewilderment, not knowing what to say. Venerable Lord Frost pondered for a moment before he finally broke the silence. The truth is right before our eyes. Of course, we won't doubt young Master's ability anymore, but I wonder why young Master Yun would do this? Venerable Lord Snow and Venerable Lord Sword perked up. This was a good question. There must be a reason for you to save us. There really isn't a reason. Yunyang smiled. Don't worry, the three of you. Yunyang will never use this favor to make the three venerable lords work for him. Yunyang still has this basic morality. This was what the three of them were most worried about. After all, they owed Yunyang so many favors. If he really wanted them to work for him, they would not be able to answer. It was certain that the three of them were unwilling, but if they were to reject him directly, it would sound bad and they would not be able to get past it. They owed too much. Hearing Yunyang's words, the three of them could not help heaving a sigh of relief. Then, Venerable Lord Frost felt a weight lifted off his shoulders, but he was even more confused. There aren't so many whys. Yunyang paused before he continued. When I first got to know the three venerable lords, there were many misunderstandings that caused us to stand on opposite sides. Even now, the animosity still exists. But think about it, where is the initial focus of our conflict? It's not hard to figure out why I would be kind to the three venerable lords. What the three venerable lords have done for your brothers, in my opinion, is truly touching. Such brotherhood is what I've been pursuing and even trying my best to achieve. He sighed softly and said emotionally, I have brothers as well. I can also disregard everything for my brothers. The three of them could deeply feel the deep emotions contained in Yunyang's words. They were words that came from the bottom of his heart, without a hint of falsehood. Recalling the filthy incident with Yunyang that day, the root cause was indeed Yunyang risking his life to save Lei Dongtian. It was truly highlighting the importance he placed on brotherhood. It was because they shared the same sentiments and shared the same logic. How could they not feel touched and empathize with him? People who can disregard everything for their brothers, I don't think they should just die like this. Yunyang said honestly, therefore, even if it's only for this, I have a reason to act. Saving the three of you can save Venerable Lord Ice from grieving for his brothers in the netherworld. It can also preserve a tale of brotherhood in this world. Every word he said came from the bottom of his heart, sincere and sincere. The three of them were even more moved. With Venerable Lord Snow taking the lead, the three of them bowed at the same time. Thank you for young Master Yun's generosity. Venerable Lord Sword was the most hot-tempered among the three of them, but he was also the most outspoken. He said, when young Master Yun talked about brothers just now, I have something that I have to say. Yunyang said, please speak, Venerable Lord Sword. Venerable Lord Sword said, I know that the brother young Master Yun mentioned is Lei Dongtian. Forgive me for being straightforward, but Lei Dongtian and young Master Yun's behavior are like heaven and earth. How can they be mentioned in the same breath? I dare say that this person has ill intentions towards young Master Yun. Young Master Yun must be cautious. Chapter 621. Venerable Lord Frost and Venerable Lord Snow kept signaling him with their eyes, but Venerable Lord Sword continued to speak without a care in the world. In the end, he said, I know that young Master Yun will not be pleased to hear these words. Coming from someone like me who has a grudge against him, I suspect that I am trying to sow discord, but I have to say it anyway. Please forgive me, young Master Yun. Yunyang was silent for a long time. After a while, he finally nodded lightly and said, I understand the Venerable One's good intentions, but, the first thing that people pay attention to when they interact with each other is fate at first sight. Everything that has happened in the past is even more indescribable. Let's take 10,000 steps back. Who doesn't have a little bit of selfishness in life? Who can guarantee that they don't have a little bit of their own little schemes and motives? In the future. He nodded with difficulty and said, I will be careful. I will do my best to be prepared. That would be for the best. Young master is magnanimous and readily accepts good advice. We are impressed. The three of them smiled at the same time. Now that you've gotten your revenge, what are your plans for the future? Yunyang asked. Venerable Lord Sword said hatefully, Hong Zhan isn't dead yet. How can this vengeance be considered avenged? Yunyang chuckled. Going too far is as bad as falling short. I think it's enough. Also, the three venerable lords should think that it's about time. Venerable Lord Snow asked, What do you mean, young Master Yun? Yunyang said seriously, It's understandable that the three of you are seeking revenge for Venerable Lord Ice, but more than 10,000 people have died here in Tiantang City ever since the three of you have laid out your vengeance for revenge. I really think that the three of you can stop now. Even if the three of you still have some unwillingness in your hearts, and still feel that you haven't completely fulfilled your wish, no matter what, you've already accomplished more than half of it. Stopping now is also a brave retreat. If we continue to be entangled here, there will only be one result, and that is, the three of you will die here as well. Next time, I believe there won't be any flukes. Yunyang spoke with sincerity. If the three of you are willing to listen to my humble opinion, why don't you retire from the martial world? Isn't this another way to fulfill your brother's wish and achieve the goal you've always wanted to achieve? Hearing Yunyang's words, the trio could not help chuckling bitterly. Retire from the martial world? Of course we want to leave the martial world and live a peaceful life, but how would you know how terrifying the Four Seasons Tower is? How can we retreat? Today's luck ends today. After today, other than facing the pursuit of the Merciless Tower and the Hall of Crimson Blade, we still have to wait for the Four Seasons Tower's pursuit. Retreat? I can't retreat. Venerable Lord Snow's gaze towards Yunyang was filled with warmth and gentleness. It was the same for Venerable Lord Sword and Venerable Lord Frost. The other party saved them and did not ask for anything from them. Instead, he advised the three of them to retire and live the rest of their lives in peace. Everything that had happened before them proved that Yunyang did not harbor any malicious intent towards the three of them, he only treated them with sincerity and kindness. Furthermore, Yunyang's words were spoken from the bottom of his heart. Every word he said was for the sake of the three of them. The three of them were veterans in the martial world, how could they not hear it? Ever since they got to know Yunyang, they had been at odds with each other since the beginning. Then, they had come to a mutual compromise. Then, they admired each other and even owed each other a favor. Now, they had completely acknowledged each other. It was truly a long and tortuous process. Before this, the three venerable lords would never have dreamed that they would experience so many psychological changes towards a young man and change their opinions so many times. There are only unimaginable solutions in this world and unachievable things. If the three of you really intend to retire, it's not like there's no way. Yunyang said seriously, let's just talk about the simplest method. In Tiantang City, I'm confident that I can find three fellows who have committed the most heinous crimes and disguise them as the three of you before killing them. We can even let the Merciless Tower and the Hall of Crimson Blade do it. As long as it's set up properly, this substitution plan can guarantee our safety. Not only can the three of you leave in peace, there won't be any trouble in the future. As long as you're careful, I believe there won't be any accidents even if you want to. No matter how powerful the Four Seasons Tower is, it'll still have its limits. With the three of you's understanding of the Four Seasons Tower, you should be quite confident in seeking fortune and avoiding calamity. Yunyang smiled. Sigh, young Master Yun's plan is thoughtful, but it's a pity that it's impossible for it to work on us. Venerable Lord Snow was a little disappointed. Thank you, young Master Yun, for your kindness. However, it's not that the three of us don't want to retire from the martial world and live peacefully. There's something fishy about us. No matter where we go, as long as we're still on this continent, we're destined to have nowhere to live. The Four Seasons Tower can find us any time. Ah. Yun Yang was doubtful. What's so powerful about it? The three of them sighed dejectedly. Even so, the Four Seasons Tower's forces in Tiantang City are basically all gone. Even if they still have some strength left, they won't be a threat to you in the short term. Yun Yang said. Young Master Yun knows too little about the Four Seasons Tower. The combat power that the Four Seasons Tower has displayed this time is only the tip of the iceberg. It's hardly worthy of praise. In fact, there should be 2 more people around Tiantang City. The three of them chuckled bitterly. One of them is a scholar while the other is a warrior. They're the real troublesome characters. When they came, they only left after understanding the situation. They didn't participate in the planning of the incident. Otherwise, our plan wouldn't have gone so smoothly. Yes, these two are the Four Seasons Tower's true helmsmen in Yutong. Venerable Lord Snow sighed softly and said word by word, they're unfathomable. If we were to back out, we wouldn't be able to hide it from these two people no matter what. A cold glint flashed in Yun Yang's eyes as he said, one of them is a scholar while the other is a warrior, unfathomable? Is it because of these two that the three of you can't go into seclusion? Do they have some kind of unique method to locate the three of you? Venerable Lord Sword chuckled bitterly. That's not exactly the case, but it's a fact that these two people are very useful. As long as these two people are dealt with, the three of you can go into seclusion in peace? If so, I'll help you deal with these two people. The three venerable lords chuckled bitterly at the same time. Young Master Yun, we probably didn't make things clear just now. The evaluation of a scholar and a warrior just now was only based on the direction of their actions. In terms of a cultivator's evaluation method, both of them are the pinnacle experts of this world, and at the same time, they're peerless sages. If they could be dealt with so easily, wouldn't we have done so long ago? Venerable Lord Snow chuckled bitterly. I'll only say one thing. I believe young Master Yun should have some understanding of these two people's abilities. Back when the Nine Heavens domain descended on Yutong, it was these two people who sneaked into Tiantang City, plotting and setting up a mission that the Nine Supremes had to go for. Then, they set up the omnipresent void formation to capture all of Yutong's 9 Supremes. That's not all. After they had planned everything, they didn't intervene further. Instead, they retreated immediately, making it seem as if this matter had nothing to do with the both of them. In fact, the series of plans against the 9 Supremes, every link and every step, were carried out strictly according to the set direction they had set. They were executed meticulously. The truth has also proven that every link and step in the process has been calculated by them. Such intelligence, no matter how much they think highly of themselves and are unwilling to belittle themselves, it's still something we dare not even think about. Venerable Lord Snow said, furthermore, although these two people have their own faces, it seems that one is a cultivation expert while the other is a powerless strategist. However, we all know that this is not the case. These two people are the pinnacle experts of this world who have reached the state of returning to their natural state. Even if the three of us, or even the 5 venerable lords of the past, were to join forces and besiege them, it would be difficult to shake either one of them. Isn't such a character terrifying? And, I've been fishing for the whole day today. Sorry for the late update. But fishing was great. I caught 3 wild carps that weighed 17 to 18 caddies and 16 wild crucian carps that weighed more than a caddy. It was great. Chapter 622. Yunyang snorted, a murderous glint in his eyes as he said, "So this is the truth behind the Nine Supremes' mishap. All the more reason why these two people can't be left alive. The Nine Supremes Lords are the empire of Yutong's great heroes. They're our greatest enemies for harming our heroes. They must pay the price for this. We, the people of Yutong, have always regretted not being able to avenge the Nine Supremes Lords. Now that we have such an important clue, we must bring these two to justice no matter what. We must cut them into pieces, dismember them, and grind their bones into ashes. I was only willing to help the three of you because we were like-minded. Now that we have a common enemy, we should work together and help each other." The three venerable lords could not help rolling their eyes when they heard Yunyang's words. "Do you think it's so easy? Bring them to justice?" They were speechless. Which of these two people was easy to bring to justice? Yunyang stood up and bowed deeply. "I hope the three venerable lords can help me a little. Tell me the identities of these two people and their hiding places. I must eliminate these two people, these two common enemies, with all I have. Young Master Yun, these two people are too capable." Venerable Lord Snow said, "It's not that we don't want to tell you. In fact, we wish for these two people to die faster than anyone else. However, if we tell you, it'll be sending you to your death. Young Master is a young man with a bright future ahead of you. Why do you have to be impulsive and provoke an invincible enemy?" Yunyang pondered for a moment and said in a low voice, "It looks like if I don't give the three of you some confidence, it'll be hard for the three of you to have the will to fight. I won't keep you in suspense anymore. There's something that the three of you might know, but you might not be very clear about it." He lowered his voice. The three of them felt nervous at the same time and could not help asking, "What is it?" "I believe the three of you know that Ling Xiaozui and Dugu Chou are in Tiantang City now." Yunyang said in a low voice, "However, the three of you probably don't know that these two people are staying together. Although it's only the first time they've met each other, they're like old friends." The trio's eyes shone when they heard him. "If these two people were to help us in battle, it would be a different story." But then he sighed and said, "But how can these two people be so easily mobilized?" Yunyang flashed a mysterious smile. "There's always a way out. I believe the three of you know that. Big brother Ling Xiaozui has a grudge with the Four Seasons Tower and owes me a huge favor. If I were to ask him to act and the target is someone from the Four Seasons Tower, I believe the chances are pretty high." The three venerable lords sucked in a cold breath in unison, looking at Yunyang like they had seen a ghost. "Really? Is young Master Yun speaking the truth?" "It's 100% true. Yunyang promised seriously. Just last night, Brother Ling and the rest came to my house for a drink and formally introduced Senior Duga to me." As soon as he said that, the three of them felt a wave of dizziness. It took them a while to regain their composure. They looked at each other and saw the look in each other's eyes. This was feasible. It was definitely feasible. Thinking of this, the three of them who had reached a consensus immediately became spirited. If they could live, why would they want to die? What was more, there was still hope for revenge. It was a great opportunity to annihilate their enemy. How could they let it go? Venerable Lord Snow sucked in a deep breath. If young Master has such a strong support, the situation will be different. I can tell young Master about those two people. However, young Master, you still have to be cautious. If Ling Xiaozui isn't willing to act, then, you must not act recklessly. Where there's life, there's hope. Don't worry, don't worry. I treasure my life very much as well," Yunyang said. The four of them exchanged smiles. Venerable Lord Snow lowered his voice to a whisper. "One of them is the Crown Prince's chief strategist, Sir Bai. Sir Bai is especially dangerous. Setting aside his high cultivation base, there are countless secret tunnels and mechanisms in his residence alone. Just inside his residence, there are countless mechanisms and secret passages, many of which are more than 100 feet underground, and there is even a secret passage that leads to 500 miles out of the city. Other than that, Sir Bai has more than one substitute, Venerable Lord Snow said. Venerable Lord Snow said, his substitutes are hiding in his residence. From what I know, there are at least 3 of them. Even if one of them is killed, it's hard to determine if it's the real body or a substitute. His many substitutes, be it their expressions, height, weight, or even their auras, are exactly the same. There's no way to differentiate them in detail. So there's such a thing. This is a little tricky. Yunyang frowned and began to ponder, his palms breaking out in cold sweat. It was fortunate that he did not act rashly. Otherwise, he would have fallen into a trap. As for the other person, he's the marshal of one of them, Venerable Lord Snow said. Venerable Lord Snow said, he's a high official in the Board of War, the 3rd person in the military after Fu Baogua. He's specifically in charge of approving military plans. Wu Ying. Yun Yang's expression changed abruptly when he heard the words. Wu Ying. Yun Yang thought the name sounded familiar, but he did not feel that it was familiar at the same time. This person was just like his name, untraceable and hard to trace. This person held a position in the Board of War and had his own courtyard. He was specifically in charge of approving military plans. His position was extremely high, and the reason he had such a high position was that his military accomplishment was unimaginably high. There was basically nothing that could be changed about any plan that came out from his hands. Not only did no one dare to change it, but no one could. Ever since he had taken up this position, not only had he not made any mistakes, he had never even stepped out of the courtyard. Only a few trusted aides would send him all the required information, and he would toss them out of the window after he was done with the verification. Such a maverick could not even be considered as a reclusive person, he was simply living in seclusion. As time went by, everyone knew that there was such a person in the Board of War. He was high and powerful, but he never showed his face. Therefore, Yutong's official's evaluation of him was that he was a person who was only willing to lower his head and work honestly. Even when old Grand Commandant Fang Qingtian was sick and unable to handle many matters, and Fu Baoguo was not around, Wu Ying could still manage all the work in the Board of War in an orderly manner with only a few pieces of paper. There was no trouble at all. Everything he had handled had proven one thing: he was a wise man who could devise strategies and determine victory from 1,000 miles away. This person was Fang Qingtian, Qiu Jianhan, and the other old marshal's most trusted and most valued person. Based on the current situation, after the old Grand Commandant passed away and Fu Baogua did not return from guarding the border, the future number 1 person in the Board of War would only be this person. No one could do it better than him. Fu Baogua had even said that this person had the talent to rule the world and that he was far inferior to him in military matters. It was also because of this reason that when Yun Yang was looking for the traitor, he had even investigated the Empress herself thoroughly. Even the Emperor was within his range of suspicion and he did not trust Qiu Jianhan and Leng Daoyin 100%. However, he had never thought that the traitor would be this person. Even now, when Venerable Lord Snow uttered this name, Yun Yang felt as if a bolt from the blue had exploded in his heart, but there was also an incredulous thought. What's going on with him? Unbelievable, Yun Yang murmured. Until now, Yun Yang had even thought that Venerable Lord Snow was slandering Wu Ying. However, after thinking about it again and again, he still believed it. This was because the most unlikely traitor might not necessarily not be a traitor. The most impossible person was usually the one who was in the dark. I know that young master must have doubts. Actually, the proof that Wu Ying is martial can be very simple. This person has an extremely high cultivation base. Venerable Lord Snow said, at least, it's higher than ours. I think this proof is enough. Yun Yang was immediately enlightened. It was true that if Wuing only had a certain level of cultivation base, it could not be considered as proof. However, if he had an ability that was even higher than the three venerable lords, then it would be a huge problem. Just the theory of him hiding in the imperial court could not be justified. There's one more thing that I need to reiterate. This person's intelligence is not any weaker than Sir Bai's. Venerable Lord Snow said, compared to Mr. Nian, who has always been famous in the world, these two are the real venomous snakes of the Four Seasons Tower, the real venomous warriors. Strictly speaking, their positions in the Four Seasons Tower aren't very high. They're even below us and have to be restrained by our venerable lords. However, when it comes to worldly affairs, especially those related to Yutong, Zhou, Dongxian, Dayuan, and other empires, these places, no matter what the Four Seasons Tower does, it has to go through their hands. These two people are the civil and martial ministers of the Four Seasons Tower. Yun Yang's body swayed as he sighed faintly. If he had the Four Seasons Tower's intelligence network as a foundation, Wu Ying's halo of knowing everything in the world and being able to devise all sorts of schemes could be reduced by a little. Therefore, we must proceed with caution. We can't afford to be careless. Venerable Lord Snow had repeated this more than 10 times that night. I understand. I truly understand now. Yun Yang said, if I don't have complete confidence, I won't act rashly and alert the enemy. He then stood up and said, rest well here, the three of you. This is a very secluded place. I can guarantee that as long as you don't show yourselves, those assassins won't be able to find you even if they flip the entire Tiantang city upside down. Compared to them, I, Yun Yang, am the true local boss of Tiantang city. He said softly, therefore, the three of you should take care of yourselves first and recuperate quickly. In the future, we have plenty of time. The three of them nodded in unison. Looking at the 2 bottles of medicinal pills that Yun Yang left behind before he left, the three of them were overwhelmed with emotions. Yutong's young master Yun was indeed a friend worth befriending. He was courageous, upright, and righteous. His strong sense of brotherhood went without saying. His meticulous care was enough to move one's heart and leave a lasting impression on them. It's a pity that we were on the opposite side from the start. The knot in our hearts is always hard to untie. Venerable Lord Sword sighed slightly. Otherwise, I would really like to have a closer relationship with such a friend. Venerable Lord Snow snorted and said, put away your extravagant hopes. Young Master Yun has been extremely benevolent to us. Befriending him is only creating trouble for him. My only wish now is to repay young Master's favor as much as I can. Whether I roam the world from now on or retire into seclusion in the forest, I'm so tired. Venerable Lord Frost sighed as well. The three of them spoke no more, remaining silent. Yun Yang returned to his residence and frowned, not speaking for a long time. Just from the 3 venerable lords' descriptions, Yun Yang could imagine how terrifying these 2 people, one civil and one martial, were. Just like what he had said, to deal with these 2 people, they could not act rashly. Only under the premise that they had 100% chance of success and had to deal with both of them at the same time could they act. Otherwise, even if they could take down one of them, the other would vanish from this world immediately. Yun Yang could even guarantee that if these 2 people were to disappear, he might not be able to find them again even if he exhausted his entire life with his current ability. Yun Yang frowned, racking his brains to come up with a foolproof plan of action. However, what made him feel the most helpless was that Ling Xiaozue and the other 3 were not here. Just like what Ling Xiaozue had said, do you need the 4 of us to be your bodyguards for such a trivial matter in Tiantang City? Now that we're targeting Mr. Nian, it means that the Four Seasons Tower's top management has been delegated to the 4 of us. The rest are useless, why would we need to do anything? Therefore, they had left last night, not even allowing Yun Yang to watch the battle of the century from the sidelines. As expected, they had not returned since they left. Yun-yang did not know how much their situation had evolved. In spite of this, Yun-yang thought that he could not count on the 4 old men for this battle. In spite of this, he could only rely on the forces he had on hand to deal with these 2 extremely frightening characters. When it rains, it pours. Bai Xue was not here yet, and he still had to leave someone behind to protect Bauer and ensure his safety. Based on this, the soldiers he could use were truly limited. How could he ensure that he could take down the 2 men without any mistakes? We are severely understaffed. Yun-yang sighed gloomily. Chapter 623. It was not that the current situation was not optimistic, it was pessimistic. Yun-yang sighed, his thoughts whirling. How could he kill 2 peerless experts with such a limited force? What's not enough? A clear and melodious voice rang out. Yun-yang looked towards the source of the voice. Ji Lingxi was dressed in white, like a fairy who had suddenly walked down from the moon. She stood elegantly in front of him, her beautiful eyes like limpid autumn waters as she looked over. Yun-yang's heart began to thump furiously. Ever since that day, he did not know what had happened to him, but every time he saw Ji Lingxi, he felt that the girl was so beautiful. Moreover, this beauty seemed to have a kind of magic that could captivate one's soul. The medicine he had applied on her previously was still applied to her face, but when he looked at her, he could only feel that the person before him was so devastatingly beautiful, so beautiful that it was hard to describe. It was an elegance that came from her bones. She had a fairy-like physique, as if there was an aura of immortality swirling around her. She was otherworldly. Even with Yun-yang's composure, he still felt that he was losing control of himself, wanting to do something bad. Now that he saw the girl looking at him lovingly, he wailed in his heart, "This is killing me." Just a touch was enough to kill him, but she was so seductive, but who could resist such temptation? It's none of your business. Yun-yang frowned instinctively. Facing such an irresistible temptation at such a frustrating time, he could not help feeling flustered. He subconsciously put on the airs of a big brother. "Girl, why aren't you resting? What are you doing out here?" If he did not put on the airs of a big brother, he might really be bewitched by this girl. Ji Lingxi quietly rolled her eyes and said, "Why did I come out again? I'm just here to talk to you while I'm cultivating. Why, am I not even receiving this treatment now?" Yun-yang said in a seemingly sincere tone, "Lingxi, you know that the martial world is unusually chaotic now. There might be traps and ambushes everywhere. You can't fall behind in your cultivation base no matter what. You're still young and haven't experienced the dangers of Jianghu. Be a good boy and quickly go back to practice." Listening to Yun-yang's pretentious tone, Ji Lingxi almost laughed out loud. She sat down opposite him and said with a smile, "You don't have to be so stubborn. Tell me what's on your mind, maybe I can help you with some ideas. 2 heads are better than 1. I'll give you some advice. It's better than you working behind closed doors." Ji Lingxi's natural action of sitting down seemed to be mixed with an inexplicable immortal aura that kept surging from her. Yun-yang stared straight ahead, his Adam's apple bobbed as he said with difficulty, "I think I'm not young anymore." Ji Lingxi narrowed her eyes. "Huh? What do you mean by that?" Yun-yang coughed and said, "I just think that I should look for a wife, or rather, have a woman." Just as he finished his sentence, Yun-yang wanted to slap himself 19 times. Why did this sentence come out of his mouth? Even if he thought that way, he couldn't say it out loud. Oh my God! These were Yun-yang's thoughts right now. Yun-yang did not know what was going on these few days, but he knew that Ji Lingxi was getting more and more attractive to him. It was getting harder and harder to resist. It had completely conquered his previously tranquil state of mind. Each time he saw it, his heart would flutter and his soul would leave his body. He would even dream of it, unable to forget it. He really wanted to touch it, hug it, kiss it, and then do that, or that, but. No way. No way. Once he thought of the price he had to pay for hugging her, of being flung so far away and having his organs overturned, of bleeding from all orifices, of being severely injured and so on, Yun Yang could still suppress his restless heart. At the same time, Yun Yang could not help but realize that he was aroused. This time, he was really aroused. For the next few nights, he would occasionally cough. There was even one morning when he realized that there was a big, sticky, and dried lump in his blankets. Based on all the above, Yun Yang clearly realized that he had grown up and should find a woman. What he had said earlier was his true thoughts. He had buried them in his heart and had never spoken them out loud. After all, these words were not something that could be spoken out casually. However, he did not expect that when Ji Lingxi came today, he would suddenly feel that the attraction he felt this time was much stronger than any other time before. Then, he did not know which muscle in his brain spasmed, but the moment his upper and lower lips touched, he began to moan. Ji Lingxi smiled sweetly and said, "I didn't expect young Master Yun to have the thought of starting a family. That's not easy. I wonder if you have someone that you like?" She smiled as if she was not nervous at all. However, one could vaguely see that her upper and lower teeth seemed to be pressed together while her gaze was glinting coldly. "I've just confessed to you a few days ago. It's fine that you didn't respond. Now you want to find a woman? What do you want? Who do you want to find?" Yun Yang coughed dryly. "Currently, I don't think there's anyone, right?" "No?" She actually said, "No?" The answer was more detestable than he had imagined. Did she not see that there was a lively one right in front of her? Ji Lingxi's smile grew gentler, the icy glint in the depths of her eyes almost uncontrollable. She gritted her teeth and said with a smile, "Does young Master Yun have any specific requirements for your women? We're on the same side. Why don't you tell me? Perhaps I can think of something for you." She said with infinite gentleness, "You should know very well that I have a lot of little sisters. Every one of them is a young lady from a respectable family. They have good looks, good figures, good family background, good manners, good temperament, and even if they want to be well versed in both literature and martial arts, there are many of them who are talented and good-looking." Yun Yang was dumbfounded by Ji Lingxi's words. He was puzzled by his current state of mind as well. Was he not thinking about how to deal with those two people just now? Was he not lamenting about his lack of manpower and his incompetence? Why did the topic suddenly change to a completely unrelated place? What kind of twist was this? It was 2F** King mystical. However, for some reason, Yun Yang actually began to ponder Ji Lingxi's words almost instinctively. Seeing that he did not speak for a long time, Ji Lingxi could not help urging him, "Tell me quickly. How would I know what you like if you don't tell me? There has to be a direction." Yun Yang coughed dryly and murmured, "Actually, I don't have a high requirement, as long as it's a woman." Ji Lingxi chuckled and said, "It's the hardest if there's no requirement. It's easier to choose with specific requirements. There's a peerless beauty in front of you, do you understand? You actually want to, as long as it's a woman. Are you trying to drive me to my grave? Are you trying to get me killed?" Yun Yang coughed again, seeming to think seriously for a moment before he said, "Well, as long as it's a hug and a kiss and doesn't get beaten up, it's fine. Like Shangguan." Bang! 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 Yun Yang was flung away, his limbs flailing. Bang! Chapter 624. Lao Mei sprang out like his buttocks were on fire. "Young master, what's wrong? Is there an enemy attack?" Yun Yang stood up with a grimace. "Don't worry, I can still handle it." Lao Mei pursed his lips and secretly rolled his eyes. Then, Ji Lingxi stormed out of Yun Yang's yard and strode back to her room, slamming the door shut with a loud bang. It was a terrifying sight to behold. Yun Yang heaved a long sigh and shrugged, saying helplessly, "Lao Mei, it's a wise decision for you not to have a wife in your entire life. Let me tell you, the hardest thing to please in this world is none other than a woman." Lao Mei's lips moved, finally letting out a long sigh as he said, "Young master, have I ever told you that it's not that I don't want to find a wife, it's just that I've been waiting for someone?" Yun Yang was stunned. "Lao Mei, I didn't know you were such a womanizer." Lao Mei was speechless. King Hell, your father wants to flip the table. I've been single for most of my life, and I'm King Womanizer? Young master, you're so good with words. Does your father know about it? Ji Lingxi, who had returned to her room, was already flushed red. Her chest was still heaving as she cursed softly, "This pervert. Filthy. Despicable. 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 I'm so angry." Ji Lingxi was puzzled as well. This fellow had been behaving like an otherworldly Taoist scholar a few days ago. How had he become a gangster in just a few days? What exactly had happened in the process? What she did not know was that Yun Yang could not be blamed for this. The reason, or rather, the key, was her own aura and aura. The sudden change, the drastic change, was so tempting that it could not be described with words. In addition, a certain someone had confessed to Yun Yang a few days ago, causing his heart to waver. How could he be as calm as still water? Of course, he had a change of heart, such as, should I find a wife or not? After such a change, there would be no more questions that would follow. It would only continue to develop in one direction, and that was, it was time for him to find a wife. Of course, there was another equally crucial factor. It was also because of Ji Lingxi. The red glow on Ji Lingxi had given Yun Yang a great sense of hope. With such an unparalleled master holding the line, his brothers were definitely not dead. This was too important to Yun Yang. It was because of this additional change that Yun Yang's mindset had changed, or rather, it had changed Yun Yang's life from now on. The depression and guilt that had accumulated in his heart had dissipated by more than half in an instant. If he had retained his original mentality, he would only play dumb and bluff his way through no matter how irresistibly seductive and irresistible Ji Lingxi had presented him, he would never have taken any proactive actions. No matter how much his heart raced, he would only have played dumb to get away with it. Of course, Ji Lingxi could not comprehend the complicated details. Even when Yun Yang's drastic psychological change originated from her and her own unsolved mystery, it was still the same. She sat on the chair and rested her chin on her hands. She could not help recalling the strange dream that she had been having for the past few nights. How could I have the same dream for so many days consecutively? This is inexplicable. What is going on? Is it reminding me of something? Or is fate hinting at something? Everything is inexplicable. Most of it is blurry and I can't see it clearly. What is that image? Why does it make me feel so familiar? Ji Lingxi was lost in her thoughts, recalling the scenes of her dreams these few nights. I can only comprehend everything myself. Even if Sister Yu is still here, I can't ask her. What I've experienced can't be described with simple words. It's just that my cultivation base has improved in the time it takes to dream at night. After 4 to 5 consecutive nights, my cultivation base has skyrocketed from the beginner realm of the heaven realm to the 9th heaven. If it's the same tonight, how can I advance to the Tao realm? Ji Lingxi looked inward again to check on her cultivation base progress. She was baffled and in disbelief. This feeling, it's not even as surreal as a dream. It's broad daylight, but I still feel like I'm in a dream. Everything feels so surreal. If I have this dream every night from now on, it won't be difficult for me to ascend to the Tao realm. Even becoming an immortal won't be a difficult task. Ji Lingxi was stunned. What's wrong with my body? How can there be such an unbelievable change? Ji Lingxi checked every aspect of her body, meridians, everything is in perfect condition. There are no flaws at all. If I must point out a specific change, it seems like, only my breasts seem to have grown bigger during this period of time. Ji Lingxi propped her hands against her chest, blushing involuntarily. Her eyes wandered as her imagination ran wild. The night passed uneventfully. Early the next morning, Ji Lingxi opened her eyes. Her gaze was thick with doubt and intense shock. I've really ascended to the Tao realm, and I'm at the pinnacle of the first-tier Tao realm, but why is the dream even more blurry this time? After a strange, blurry dream where I can't see anything clearly, my cultivation base has skyrocketed. What is this? Ji Lingxi laid on the bed, her eyes filled with bewilderment. Her eyes were filled with question marks. Since the beginning of time, she had never heard of such a strange thing. A night of sleep and a dream, and her cultivation base had skyrocketed, level by level. How heaven-defying was this? If this could happen, what was the point of cultivating? Why would they still need treasures? They could just sleep every day. Even a novel wouldn't dare to write such a rapid increase in cultivation. There was no logic, no precedent, and no feasibility at all. However, such an unrealistic thing had happened to him. What could he do? Ji Lingxi got up from the bed, washed her face, and dressed herself up. Suddenly, she realized something very important. My cultivation base seems to be higher than Yunyang's now. In front of Yunyang's door, a certain person who had cultivated for the entire night felt that his cultivation base had improved again. He was only a step away from the 9th heaven realm. My cultivation base has improved quite well these few days. I believe that I'll be able to look down on this generation with such progress and no one will be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with me. Yunyang, who was feeling proud, opened the door and mused, it's good that my cultivation base has improved, but I can't be blindly arrogant. I should go according to my original plan and test Sir Bai, see if there are any other fortuitous encounters. Just as he pushed the door open, he saw Ji Lingxi standing at the door of his room, dressed in martial attire. She was holding a staff that was neither too long nor too short in her hands. Yunyang was startled, instinctively covering his angry-looking erection. What are you doing? Ji Lingxi had not noticed that at first, but when she saw his attempt to cover it up, she blushed and said through gritted teeth, You. What do you think about every day? Yunyang bowed, looking flustered. I don't think about you, how could you, Yunyang? Ji Lingxi was enraged, her eyes spitting fire. How can you let such a beautiful morning light go to waste? Come, let me spar with you and exhaust some of your exuberant energy. Chapter 625. Yunyang hurriedly cultivated the frozen heart charm and only straightened himself after a long while. He chuckled and said, Spar? Let's talk about it later. My cultivation base has improved recently. I might not be able to control my strength as well. It was obvious that he did not take Ji Lingxi seriously at all. His words were a high compliment to his own ability. It was only then that a certain someone managed to suppress his reaction, wondering what had happened to him in the past few days. There had never been such a situation in the past. He really did not think much of Ji Lingxi and, of course, neglected the fact that she had become a Tao realm expert in a split second. Logically, even if she had consumed an immortal pill, it was impossible for her to leap from a beginner level of heaven realm to a Tao realm expert. How could Ji Lingxi, who was full of ambition, tolerate being ignored by someone whose cultivation base was lower than hers? She turned and leaped into the yard. Cut the nonsense. Come quickly. She could not stay any longer. Her heart was beating too fast. Yun Yang walked down the stairs in a carefree manner. He picked up a staff in a graceful manner and said in a sanctimonious manner, "Fine, I shall coach you on behalf of my 8th brother today and give you some pointers on your martial arts." Yun Yang had held back most of his strength when they exchanged blows, afraid that he would really hurt Ji Lingxi. However, Ji Lingxi had gone all out right from the start. Caught off guard, Yun Yang was struck dumb the first time they met. He could only let out a strange cry, what the hell, a moment later. Ji Lingxi tossed the staff away and turned to leave with her head held high. Her face was filled with arrogance, but her words could still be heard from afar. "I've learned a lot from today's spar. It looks like cultivation can't be done behind closed doors, it needs to be done with actual combat. From today onwards, I'll come and spar with you every morning. You said it yourself, cultivation base has to be improved. The martial world is just so treacherous." The girl had returned what Yun Yang had said yesterday, word for word. She had said it in a righteous and dignified manner. At the scene, Yun Yang was covered in dust and there was a huge bump on his forehead like a unicorn. His handsome face was blank. "Who can tell me what's going on? Wasn't this girl at the beginning of the heaven realm? How could someone with such a cultivation level suppress me like this?" No matter how powerful a treasure of heaven and earth he consumed, it was impossible for him to directly rise to the Tao realm overnight, right? His body couldn't handle it at all. What was going on? Did I see a ghost? It hurt so much. Young Master Yun touched the bump on his forehead. His mind was in a mess. It was only now that he felt the pain. He was really shocked before. This was clearly impossible, something that did not make any sense at all, yet it had happened so vividly in front of him. How could Yun Yang not be dumbfounded? Yun Yang had witnessed how Ji Lingxi had ascended from the peak realm to the heaven realm. Just a few days ago, Ji Lingxi was still complaining that she had been stuck at beginner heaven realm for a long time. He even comforted him with kind words, such as, "It's already extremely rare for you to make such progress at your age, and you can't be impatient when it comes to cultivation." But now, he, who had already reached the 9th firmament of heaven realm, was beaten up. He had been beaten the entire time. "I've been cultivating with all my might every day." Yun Yang wanted to cry. "Emmy, come out quickly. Open up the space quickly. I can't take it anymore." It was fine if a miracle happened to someone else. However, this person was prepared to beat him up every morning. How could he tolerate this? Furthermore, Yun Yang recalled how he had sounded like an elder brother in front of Ji Lingxi and almost fell to the ground. Beaten up like this every day, how could he still have the cheek to say that he was his elder brother? How could he still have the cheek to say that he was taking care of him on behalf of his elder brother? To be a coach to guide his cultivation base? He was not even a sparring partner, he was just a target. Ji Lingxi's voice rang out, "Yun Yang, I'll take care of you on behalf of my elder brother in the future." Yun Yang covered his face with his hands. This girl. How dare she say this? She was asking for a spanking. Life was like a play, and the play was like life. It was unpredictable and indescribable indeed. The residence of Crown Prince. His Highness the Crown Prince had been wearing a gloomy expression all this while. There was hardly a moment of joy on his face. After all, ever since his father the Emperor had announced that his eldest brother's posthumous son had returned to Yutong, His Highness the Crown Prince had been living in an atmosphere of impending doom. No one would be able to feel at ease. The right of succession and Yutong's throne that was already firmly in his grasp had suddenly become precarious. The chair that he was sitting on could sprout wings and fly away at any time. It would be strange if he was in a good mood. Now, every day when he went to court, every time he made eye contact with his father the Emperor, he could always feel that the other party's gaze was not right. It was a gaze filled with disappointment, anger, and deep disgust. Naturally, His Highness the Crown Prince's mood was even worse. Recently, he had been jolted awake by nightmares every night, sitting up in a daze, drenched in cold sweat, his eyes glazed and his face pale. His Highness the Crown Prince had not rested well for a few consecutive nights. Even the Crown Princess was about to go crazy from the Crown Prince's strange behavior. In spite of this, the Crown Prince's bad luck was far from over for his career and life. To target the child who could affect the current situation and should not remain hidden, His Highness had secretly arranged for Sir Bai to help contact the assassin organizations. He had even paid half of the deposit. In spite of this, what made His Highness the Crown Prince choke on his breath was, it was not that the assassins did not come. In fact, all the assassins he had contacted earlier had come, and they had come in waves. Amidst his initial joy, His Highness could not help wondering who had found the rest of the assassins when he had only instructed for 2 waves. This was a huge problem. Although His Highness the Crown Prince was happy to see the results, he still had to pay attention to the problem. The more assassins there were, the more people with ulterior motives. Similarly, there were also many people who coveted the throne. How could His Highness be careless? Furthermore, no matter who had found the assassins, the Crown Prince would have to shoulder the blame at this critical juncture. After all, His Highness was the biggest and most direct beneficiary of this matter. In spite of this, if the matter were to end successfully and the child was gone, he would have to shoulder the blame. It did not matter. To achieve great things, one could not be bothered with trifles. Some minor issues were inevitable. They could be made up for later. However, after so many assassins had come, what was the meaning of gathering and not doing anything? You came with such a huge commotion that everyone in Tiantang City knows about it. The fear is secondary, but all the officials in the imperial court, including the Emperor and Empress, are looking at me strangely now. Do you know that? All the wealthy merchants and noble families are closing their doors and doors carefully, afraid that they might attract the assassins. In fact, there is no movement at all. Then what are you here for? Are you here to organize a group tour? Looking at the current situation, the gathering of the world's assassins is really like a gathering for a holiday. Can assassins really be related to your profession if they do not work? Can't you have a little more professionalism? Sense of time? How dare you claim to be one of the best assassin organizations in the world with this kind of behavior? His Highness had always thought so, but he could not help but feel even more depressed these days. If you don't want to work, then don't. Even if you really only came for a tour, it doesn't matter. At most, your money will go down the drain. Can't you just lose money and avoid disaster? But, not only are you not going to work, but you want to fight among yourselves. What is the meaning of this? Some of you even came up with the dictum of death. What is the meaning of this? Are you still an assassin organization? You might as well build a nation of assassins. Assassin organizations have come, but they don't work. They've only probed a few times at the beginning and they've all become obedient after the deaths. What happened to the legendary rule of assassins? To protect the interests of the clients? What about the astonishing capability of a super assassin organization? As if they had heard His Highness' inner voice, the assassin organizations had begun their work, displaying their astonishing capability. The level of their capability had completely exceeded His Highness' understanding. However, their force was not targeted at a fixed target, but at internal strife. To His Highness, the Four Seasons Tower, the Merciless Tower, the Hall of Crimson Blade, they were all King martial world organizations. Since they were martial world organizations, they were all assassin organizations. Since they were all assassin organizations, what else could they be but internal strife? While the Crown Prince was helpless to do anything about the internal strife at such a crucial time, he could only sigh deeply. These martial world barbarians are really incapable of accomplishing anything but spoiling everything. They are so unreliable. Today, they fight a few rounds here and a few people die. Tomorrow, they fight a few more rounds here and a few more people die. Then, the day after tomorrow, you guys are going to F*King start a final battle. You guys are going to start the final battle of the assassin world right here in the Empire of Yutong's capital city. Watching the martial world strife unfold like a raging fire, His Highness felt like 10,000 F*King horses were galloping through his heart. Can't you all do this after the proper business is done? You haven't even done any proper business and Tiantang City is almost destroyed by you all. All of you possess such formidable strength, why can't you first solve the client's goals? Can't you be a little more responsible, a little more professional? What's going on today? Has the dispute come to an end? His Highness asked, his expression still grim. I heard that the assassin organizations have won. Other than the top martial world force of the world, the Four Seasons Tower, has been annihilated. A strategist said, Your Highness, this is good news for us. This martial world storm should be over. It has come to an end. The Crown Prince asked gloomily, I just want some good news right now. Where are they? Can they act immediately? They disappeared after the fight. The person looked rather awkward as he said, Your Highness Rongbing, these martial world vagabonds are all skilled in martial arts. They're used to coming and going without a trace. It's difficult for us to pinpoint their exact whereabouts. We'll have to wait for them to contact us later. According to the assassin's rules, they'll have to give us an explanation since they've accepted our deposit. His Highness snorted and turned to ask, Sir Bai, what do you think? Sir Bai was dressed in a plain green robe. His face was lean with 3 long strands of beard, making him look even more elegant. He was tall and had a sage-like demeanor. Even His Highness the Crown Prince treated Sir Bai with great respect, unlike how he treated his other advisors. Sir Bai stroked his long beard and said with a faint smile, Your Highness, what will come will come. You don't have to be too anxious. You must know that more haste, less speed. His Highness said in a troubled tone, Of course I know that, but there's no room for more buffering in the current situation. There's no time to lose. I have to be impatient. The fire is about to burn me. Just yesterday, those brats also started to fan the flames, and the seeds were pointed directly at me. Empress Mother was still protecting me before, but now, she called me into the palace. Other than scolding me, warning me, and talking about brotherly love, she didn't say anything else. The way she looked at me was full of resentment. If it were not for his image, His Highness really wanted to narrate the story in tears and snot. Sir Bai smiled warmly. These are merely trivial matters. They're far from being able to shake Your Highness' foundation. Your Highness, you really don't have to be too anxious. Being too impatient will only give others something to use against you. That's what it means to say, more haste, less speed. He thought about it and said, His Majesty the Emperor has set his sights on that child, Yu Qiankuan. Everyone can see this and know it very well. It can even be said that there are only 2 people who have the chance and the right to inherit the throne at the moment. It's His Highness the Crown Prince and the eldest prince's posthumous son who popped out of nowhere. However, His Highness the Crown Prince's status in the East Palace has been established. This is the true advantage. Although Yu Qiankuan is in the Emperor's heart, he's still young. To grow to the point where he can control the imperial court, he still needs a lot of guidance and a long period of training. Sir Bai said, before that moment arrives, no matter how much His Majesty likes the Crown Prince, he won't act recklessly. Therefore, it's impossible for His Majesty to abdicate the Crown Prince's position as the Crown Prince of the East Palace. The inheritance of the throne is of great importance. There are too many uncertainties in a child's growth process. Besides, no one can tell how far he'll grow in the future. Therefore, even if it's the fastest speed and the age at which a person's nature can be seen, he'll need to be at least 11 or 12 years old. In other words, His Highness the Crown Prince has at least 7 to 8 years of leeway. In these 7 to 8 years of buffer time, no matter how displeased His Majesty is with His Highness, he won't act rashly. There are countless opportunities and countless methods that can be used within these 7 to 8 years. Therefore, there's still plenty of time to play the game. There's no need to act rashly. More haste, less speed. Sir Bai's explanation made the Crown Prince's expression lighten up slowly. He was a man of great foresight, so he could understand what Sir Bai was trying to convey. The latter was actually reminding him that he had acted too hastily in looking for assassins. Not only was his effort futile, but it had also given those with ulterior motives a chance to mess with him. However, he did not say it directly, but used a tactful method to point out the problem. It was the method of a wise man. Just as Sir Bai had said, Yu Qianquan still needed a long period of growth to be a threat to the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince still had plenty of time to deal with him. There was no need to be impatient and give others something to use against him. He had been too rash. Now that he's here, we can't just do nothing, can we? Asked His Highness. Of course we can't do nothing. Sir Bai was confident. We still have to do it, but our current target needs to be changed. Our primary target can't be Yu Qianquan. He said indifferently, I believe Your Highness Crown Prince should be aware that directly targeting Yu Qianquan is too eye-catching. Furthermore, he is currently heavily guarded. If you rashly attacked him, it would be equivalent to reminding His Majesty the Emperor to increase his protection. Of course, the main reason is that we can hardly get the chance to come into contact with this child. Acting rashly will only result in more losses than gains. Then who do you want to target first, Sir Bai? Asked the Crown Prince. King Xiaoyao's heir, Yun Yang. Chapter 626. Our first target now should be King Xiaoyao's son, Yun Yang. Sir Bai said with a smile, His Majesty has placed Yu Qianquan in the residence of King Yun. It's obvious that he trusts King Xiaoyao and has even hinted that he wants to entrust his son to him. The residence of King Xiaoyao is strong and the residence is located in the center of the capital city. The environment is naturally favorable. Not only is King Xiaoyao the top expert in Yutong, his son Yun Yang's ability is also top-notch in Yutong. None of them are easy to deal with. Also, even if we disregard King Xiaoyao and his son, just the experts who come and go from the residence of King Yun and those who don't belong to the residence of King Yun are numerous. Just the strength of those guests is enough to intimidate the martial world. All in all, placing Yu Qianquan in the residence of King Yun is indeed the safest and most secure place right now. Furthermore, His Majesty's action has greatly avoided the possibility of the child's growth being affected if he spoils him too much in the palace. His Majesty is truly thoughtful. From what I can see, placing Yu Qianquan in the residence of King Yun is truly the fastest place for him to grow. There's no need to worry about his mind being affected by external factors. No one in the entire empire of Yutong would dare challenge King Yun's authority. To us, there's really no better way to deal with Yu Qianquan other than attacking him forcefully. Even with the abilities of the assassin organizations, it's still difficult to take down the residence of King Yun. As long as there's a bit of buffer time, tens of thousands of troops will come to their aid. The relationship between the residence of King Yun and the military can only be described as unshakable since the Eastern Border War. Sir Bai's train of thought did not sound very clear during his narration. Some of his words were even a little confusing and contradictory. However, when he finished speaking, the listeners would naturally realize that they had already understood the entire situation without missing anything. Does this mean that we can't kill Yu Qianquan then? The residence of King Yun is an unassailable presence? Then what Mr. said about changing the target to the Crown Prince of King Xiaoyao? Isn't it beyond our power to search for the one far away? The Crown Prince frowned again. No, no. Sir Bai said, my explanation is to point out that the residence of King Yun is indeed unsolvable from the outside. However, the so-called collapse doesn't necessarily have to be from the outside. Collapsing from the inside out is also an option. This method of disintegration is targeted at one person, Yun Yang. Sir Bai spoke slowly. Yun Yang is the most important link in the entire plan. As long as Yun Yang is dead, everything will be solved without any more obstacles. Why? His Highness was utterly confused by Sir Bai's argument. Your Highness, please think about it. Why was King Yun chosen by His Majesty to be the assistant to cultivate another successor? The main reason is that he has no desires. In fact, he is so carefree that it is unimaginable for ordinary people. The so-called high position and generous salary are no longer attractive to him, who is already on par with the king. How could the so-called gold and silver move the heart of a cultivation expert like him? As for beautiful wives and concubines, the temptation of beauty is even more difficult to sway his mind. That's why he can carry out the task His Majesty has given him better than anyone else. It's just that his weakness is also his strength. He really has no desires. As long as someone kills Yun Yang, King Yun's transcendental state of mind can be shattered. Sir Bai's voice was like a breeze, but the words that came out of his mouth were malicious. As long as Yun Yang is dead, King Yun's state of mind will change. He'll go mad, he'll be enraged. However, whether he's mad or enraged, his attention will inevitably be diverted from Yu Qianquan. At the very least, it'll be difficult for him to be as attentive and responsible as he is now. I think by then, he'll only think of ways to find his son's murderer and avenge his son. Even if His Majesty intervenes, it'll be difficult to change King Xiaoyao's mind. When that time comes, it'll be our real chance. Not bad, not bad. His Highness was enlightened, his eyes glowing. His own son is dead, how can he still be in the mood to take care of someone else's grandson? Sir Bai's plan is marvelous indeed. Actually, the biggest advantage of this plan is its practicality. Yun Yang is different from Yu Qianquan. Yun Yang's martial skill is strong and his cultivation base is profound. After the battle at the Fortress of Resilience, his reputation has risen and he can be said to be the top talent of Yutang's younger generation. He's an existence that no one in Tiantang City dares to provoke. He can move about here and there. Not only are there plenty of opportunities for us to strike, it's also very convenient. Sir Bai smiled, unruffled. Plenty of opportunities and convenience usually means that the chances of success will be higher. The so-called profound cultivation base and martial skill are secondary. His Highness slapped his thigh. All right, let's do it. At this moment, a voice came reporting from outside the door, Your Highness, young Master Yun Yang requests an audience. His Highness' eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Even Sir Bai, who had been calm and composed all this while, was subconsciously shocked. Yun Yang? What was he doing here? His timing was impeccable. They were discussing how to get rid of him, but he had actually come knocking on their door. Was it true that one should not talk about someone behind their back? Now that they had talked about him, he had come straight to their home. The Crown Prince looked at Sir Bai, speechless. He was probably bewildered. He had tried to rope Yun Yang in, both openly and covertly, but it had never been effective. The other party had ignored him, the Crown Prince. Why had he come knocking on his door today? There must be something fishy when things are out of the ordinary. There must be a reason why this popular Crown Prince of King Yun has come here so abruptly. The rest of you, leave for now. Don't let him think that we're discussing something. Sir Bai said leisurely, I'll stay and see what this young Master Yun wants to do. His Highness was relieved to hear that. He smiled and said, "That would be best." No matter what, the visitor was a guest. His Highness the Crown Prince had to welcome him, especially in such a situation. It did not matter where Yunyang died, but he could not die in the Crown Prince's residence. Otherwise, the Crown Prince would become everyone's target and be doomed eternally. Why is young Master Yun interested in visiting me today? I am truly overwhelmed by your favor. His Highness the Crown Prince went out to welcome Yunyang with enthusiasm. Those who did not know better would have thought that he and Yunyang were good brothers. It was even possible that they were old acquaintances. I've missed you after not seeing you for so long. Yunyang laughed. Why, your Highness doesn't welcome me? What are you saying, Brother Yun? His Highness pretended to be angry and grabbed Yunyang's arm. Please, please, please. You're finally here today. I won't let you go. Come, come, you must drink with me. We won't leave until we're drunk. Amidst their banter, both of them walked forward with their arms intertwined. At the door, Sir Bai stood with a smile, watching Yunyang who was approaching. His gaze was warm, but his scrutiny was hidden. Sir Bai, allow me to introduce you. This is Tiantang City's current popular figure, young Master Yunyang. His Highness introduced him warmly. Sir Bai, didn't you say that you've heard of young Master Yun for a long time and that you've wanted to meet him for a long time? Great, I've brought him right here to you. You've gotten a great bargain today. Sir Bai raised his hands in a salute. I've heard of young Master Yun's great name for a long time. You're like thunder in my ears, like the bright moon in the sky. Yunyang laughed and returned the salute, saying, not at all. I'm the one who has truly heard of Sir Bai. After exchanging pleasantries for a while, the three of them entered the hall and took their seats as host and guest. His Highness only got to the main topic after a bunch of meaningless chatter. I've always thought that a noble person like young Master Yun would keep a respectful distance from me and never leave my side. I believe you wouldn't visit me without a reason, would you? His Highness smiled, expressing his dissatisfaction in a joking tone. Your Highness, you're straightforward with your words. Yunyang likes to speak like this the most. Everything is laid out on the table, it's the simplest and clearest. Yunyang chuckled. Yunyang does have something to ask of you this time, but it has nothing to do with your Highness. It's somewhat related to Sir Bai. The Crown Prince was surprised. Oh? Yunyang's words were obviously out of His Highness's expectation. According to what the Crown Prince knew, Sir Bai and Yunyang were two different kinds of people. If it were not for the Crown Prince's relationship, Sir Bai would not have targeted Yunyang at all. Yunyang's words were sudden and inexplicable. Sir Bai looked at Yunyang doubtfully as well. I'm flattered to hear this, but it seems that I've only just met young Master Yun today. I wonder what young Master Yun needs me for. I don't know why young Master Yun thinks that I can answer young Master Yun's request. Please enlighten me, young Master Yun. Yunyang laughed, his expression relaxed as he said, I've only just met Sir Bai, but Sir Bai's name has long filled my ears. Sir Bai's reputation as the unrivaled Go player in Tiantang City is truly well known. Coincidentally, my cultivation base has been stagnant recently and I've been using Go to calm myself down. A few days ago, I came across an incomplete manual. It's rather difficult and abstruse, but I couldn't figure it out. I've taken the liberty of coming here to ask for your guidance, Sir Bai. Sir Bai said with a smile, I don't deserve to be called the unrivaled Go player in Tiantang City. I wonder how young Master Yun knows that I know how to play Go. I've rarely touched Go pieces all these years, other than sparring with good friends. I didn't expect young Master Yun to find out. Yunyang laughed. There's a reason for this. Speaking of Tiantang City's Go player, Sir Bai isn't the most famous. In fact, I've looked for that person as well. Yes, it's the Go King, Tang Yiji. Sir Bai was hit with a sudden realization and chided Yun Yang jokingly, "So it was that fellow who sold me out. I've always been a nobody, how did I catch young Master Yun's eye and come all the way here?" Yun Yang guffawed and said, "The so-called twists and turns are just that." Tang Yishu found it hard to decipher the Go playbook as well. After I allowed him to make a copy for him, he told me that Sir Bai is the current national player in Go. He, who has the reputation of the Go King, has played with Sir Bai many times, but he has never won against Sir Bai even once. Yun Yang smiled and said, "That's why I've come looking for you." Sir Bai said in surprise, "Tang Yishi's Go skill is superb and he's worthy of the title of Go King. There's actually a Go playbook that he can't decipher? I'm interested to see for myself." Yun Yang laughed. "Go King Tang said that day that you'd be interested as long as I told Sir Bai that he couldn't decipher the Go playbook. It looks like Go King Tang is truly Sir Bai's confidant." Sir Bai laughed as well. "I'm naturally like this. It's inevitable that I'll make a fool of myself in my excitement. Young Master Yun, I wonder where the playbook is now? Can you let me play it for a while?" Yun Yang said, "I've come to ask for guidance. Of course, the playbook is with me. However, would it be inconvenient if we start the game here?" The Crown Prince guffawed. "I'm a fan of Go as well. It's my pleasure to see such a playbook that can baffle a Go King." After a series of instructions, the three of them entered the Go room impatiently. The Go board was already set up. With a pleased smile, Yun Yang slowly took out an ancient book from his embrace. It was a playbook that looked to be at least a few hundred years old. "This is the first game." Yun Yang flipped to the first page of the ancient book and started moving his hands around the Go board. Both the Crown Prince and Sir Bai observed the chess moves with a serious expression. The number of black and white Go pieces on the table increased, the changes becoming more and more complicated. Naturally, the calculation became more difficult. After about 40 to 50 moves, Sir Bai's eyes would light up with each move. When the game reached 98th move, the black Go piece seemed to be going deep alone, but it was actually a brilliant move that made Sir Bai exclaim, "Brilliant! Brilliant!" Yun Yang laughed and said, "It's brilliant, of course. However, the most exciting part is yet to come." Yun Yang stopped when he reached the 135th move. The Crown Prince and Sir Bai frowned at once. In a normal game of Go, the 135th move was probably the number of moves that were nearing the end of the game. It was not surprising, but the complexity of the game was giving both of them headaches. Based on the current situation, the black Go piece had an obvious advantage, but the white Go piece was ready to strike with an extremely solid counterattack. It was like a sword being unsheathed and a bow being knocked. There was still a chance for a counterattack to decide the outcome. Chapter 627. Sir Bai was no longer as calm as before. His brows were tightly furrowed, his attention fully focused on the Go board. In an ordinary game of Go, when it reached the number of 135 moves, the general trend was basically set. Unless it was some particularly high-level and relatively well-matched opponents, there would be no clear winner or loser due to chance encounters. In spite of this, there would always be a difference in the number of black and white pieces. It was easy to tell which side had the upper hand. Even when both sides were extremely cautious and their arrangements were exceptionally solid, there was still a slight difference. In spite of this, the game Yun Yang had laid out was obviously different. Both sides had been engaged in an intense battle right from the beginning. It was all hand-to-hand combat of life and death. However, this was not surprising. What was surprising was that both sides had yet to move a single piece up to the 135th move. This was an unbelievable result. There were flashes of swords and sabers everywhere, every step filled with murderous intent, but there was not the slightest loss or gain from moving a piece. As the game progressed, it became more and more dangerous. Whether it was the black or white sides or even the entire game, it was shrouded in an atmosphere of, take a step back, take a step forward and plunge into a bottomless abyss. If you don't cut my throat, I'll stab your heart. This was the situation. The 136 moves should be whites. In spite of this, Sir Bai held a white piece in his hand, hesitating and unable to make a move. Break? He then shook his head. No, if we break off here, it would seem like a good move, but in reality, we would be falling into the enemy's trap. Once the enemy counterattacks, not only will we lose everything we have, we will even drag one of our own dragons into the fray. It will be like a landslide. Clamp? You can't clamp it. Forcing it is like drawing legs on a snake. Push. That won't do. It'll only expose your own weakness and hasten your own defeat. Fly. Too weak in response, giving the enemy a chance. Point. Not good. Push. That won't do. Is this a robbery? But how can such a game of Go be a robbery? There's no robbery material. Sir Bai watched the game, step by step. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that the black piece was harboring malicious intentions. Each move was filled with the glint of swords and shadows, filled with traps. On the other hand, Bai Qi had been advancing with great care, setting up countless ambushes. He had already reached his limit. At this point, whoever made the first move would fall into the special situation of being attacked. In the words of cultivators, it was like two peerless experts fighting on the battlefield. First, they fought fiercely for 300 rounds without a clear winner. Then, they fell into a special state where the enemy didn't move, and neither did they. Both sides were experts, and they were fully prepared. They wanted to gain the upper hand by striking later, hoping that the other side would make the first move. Then, they would be able to break the momentum and launch a massive counterattack to defeat the enemy. With a single move, it was enough to force his opponent into a disadvantageous position and even determine the victor. Unfortunately, both sides were heavily fortified, and the situation was impregnable. This state of immobility had lasted for a long time. Whose chess record is this? Sir Bai pondered for a long time but still could not find a place to start. Finally, he could not help murmuring to himself with a frown. John Doe. Yunyang placed the Go manual on the table and said, "There's no record of the author in this Go manual, nor are there any clues to be found. I was thinking that Sir Bai's Go skill might allow me to meet him or her." "That's strange." Sir Bai said, "A man leaves his name when he passes, and a wild goose leaves its sound when it passes. A Go player who could play this game must be unparalleled in his skill. How could he not leave his name behind? I have no way of knowing. Actually, finding out who the original owner of this Go manual is a matter for another time. My true intention is still the final outcome of this game," Yunyang said. "I've never been unduly humble and I'm quite confident in Go, but I've studied this game, especially at this stage, for a long time. I've always felt that no matter how I deal with it, I'll only be committing suicide. Now that I think about it, I feel a headache coming on, but I'm also itching for the final outcome of this game. That's why I've searched everywhere for Go experts to solve my confusion. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come to the Crown Prince to ask for advice." Sir Bai pondered and said, "Such a Go game is truly captivating and captivating." He then continued, "I've heard from young master that you must have a deep understanding of Go as well. I'm not talented, but I'm willing to play the white piece with young master and deduce possible Go paths. Perhaps, I'll gain some insight." As he spoke, he placed his piece, but it was a break. Seeing this, Yunyang reacted immediately without a second thought. He outflanked and clamped down on the man's body, already setting himself up to be eaten. Sir Bai forcefully extended, barely managing to counter the move. Then, he saw Yun Yang's black piece land on the white piece's break point. The white piece's momentum was gone, there was no more room for a fight. This won't do. Allow me to change my hand. Sir Bai frowned. I'll block it here. Yun Yang pushed his hand forward without a second thought. Sir Bai entered forcefully, but Yun Yang responded with a long piece. Sir Bai broke again, and Yun Yang countered with a backhand. Sir Bai countered with a counterattack, and the situation seemed to be in his favor. However, Yun Yang's black piece flew out and embedded itself in the white piece's dragon. The situation changed drastically. If Sir Bai were to take care of the other side, the dragon would inevitably be broken into two halves, putting him in an unprecedented passive position. However, if he were to try his best to keep the dragon intact, he would need to make 3 moves to protect it completely. His side would inevitably be taken advantage of by the other side. Even the most conservative estimate would cost him at least 5 eyes. In a match between experts like this, even a difference of half an eye was enough to affect the outcome, much less 5 eyes. How could he dare to make a loss? Unable to attend to one thing and lose another, he could not advance or retreat. It was obvious that this method would not work. This still won't do. I'll change again. In the time it took to eat a meal, Sir Bai had consecutively changed 7 to 8 different go moves, but they were all destroyed by Yun Yang without exception. The white pieces lost every single one of them, unable to turn the tables. If that's the case, the white pieces are hopeless. Sir Bai pondered. But why is it marked as the white piece's victory? This is something I've been puzzled about. According to the book, the white piece should have played an exceptional move up to this point in the game and sealed the victory, then subdued the opponent and won. That's why it stopped here, Yun Yang said. The problem now is that I can't find that move. Sir Bai nodded and said, that should be the case. I'd do the same if I were to make the Go manual, but where did the white piece's winning move end up? He stood up and looked down at the Go board for a long time, deep in thought and speechless for a long time. After a long time, he switched to another direction and looked at the Go board obliquely. He looked at it from a different angle, hoping to find more clues. The onlooker sees the game better than the onlooker. It was obvious that Sir Bai was trying to pull his thoughts away from the Go board and look at the game from an outsider's point of view, but he gained nothing after a long time. Chapter 628. What did Tang Yishui say? Asked Sir Bai. Tang Yishui racked his brains until he vomited blood from exhaustion, but he still couldn't figure it out. He's recuperating now, answered Yun Yang. Vomiting blood? Recuperating? If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, how would I have thought that there's such a game in this world? It's truly a blood-vomiting manual. Sir Bai heaved a deep sigh. Suddenly, his eyes shone as he said, could this be the rumored blood-vomiting manual that no one has ever been able to solve? Yun Yang was stunned. Blood-vomiting manual? Then, the secret manual of Go? He nodded and said in deep thought, no wonder then. It's the legendary item in Go, nothing can be done about it, Sir Bai pondered with rapt attention. After trying all the methods he knew, he swiftly came to a conclusion. This game of Go could not be solved with conventional methods. Thinking about it, he tried again and began to simulate various variations in his mind. The more he thought about it, the more variations there were, but the final result was still futile. It was difficult to change the losing game. As time went on, the black and white pieces on the Go board in his mind gradually turned into a confrontation between the black and white armies. Thousands of soldiers and horses were charging over and leaving in a cloud of dust. The two peerless marshals were unleashing all sorts of tricks and variations as they fought fiercely. Sir Bai gradually appeared to be in a trance as he murmured, there's no way forward, no way back. What should I do in such a hopeless situation? How can I turn the losing game around and turn the tide? How absurd, how absurd. As he spoke, his face turned paler and paler while his body swayed like it was about to collapse. Sir Bai's mind was completely immersed in the Go game now. His vision was filled with illusions and his expression grew more unsightly, but he did not seem to notice it at all. Yun Yang looked like he was deep in thought as well, as if his soul had left his body, but his mind was not on the game at all. There was only amusement in his heart. The god of wine, Feng Xianga, has studied this Go manual for most of his life, vomiting blood until most of his lifespan is gone. Even if you've held back, you're still one of the Four Seasons Tower's civil and martial ministers. You're still a distance away from the phantom physician, Feng Xianga, the expert of the generation above you, aren't you? Let's see if you'll die if you fall for it. Bang! The Crown Prince suddenly slammed his palm on the table, and there was a loud bang. Sir Bai woke up at the sound and spat out a mouthful of blood, looking lethargic. He opened his eyes and said, "That was close." Before his words echoed in the air, Yun Yang, who was standing beside him, moved with a gurgling sound. A mouthful of blood seemed to have rushed to his throat, but he shut his mouth forcefully and swallowed the blood back with a gulp. However, no one could see the redness on his handsome face, not to mention the shaking of his body in the way he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his sleeve. It was obvious that he was in a similar state, no better than Sir Bai. Yun Yang chuckled bitterly and said, "How is this a Go playbook? It's a saber that kills. I've been laughing at the Go King for being a chess fanatic and lacking in composure. Now that I'm in the same situation, I can't believe it." Sir Bai chuckled bitterly as well. The doubt that had just risen in the depth of his eyes disappeared. It looks like this playbook isn't something we can understand. Forcing it will only bring harm and no benefit. Yun Yang retrieved the playbook and smiled bitterly. I'd better take this back and shelve it. It turns out that all paths lead to the same destination. Once the mind is immersed in the art of Go and the martial arts, it's impossible to detach. It's an obsession. Once you sink into it, you'll be injured. It's better to avoid it. Sir Bai heaved a long sigh and said, "That's right. Young master is right. The ancients have poured their blood, sweat, and tears into creating this earth-shattering Go game. How can it be treated lightly?" Despite his thoughts, he felt an inexplicable reluctance when he saw Yun Yang keeping the playbook in his embrace. "Young Master Yun, are you really not going to study it anymore? Are you going to stop now?" Yun Yang chuckled and said self-deprecatingly, "Sir Bai is a wise man. How can you not understand the reason behind this? This Go game can never be played again. If we force it, it'll only be disadvantageous to both of us. Forgive me for being frank, but I'm not a selfless friend to His Highness the Crown Prince, and we've never been on the same side in politics. Our standpoints are different, so naturally, we can only bear our own fate. Of course, I can't bear for anything to happen to me. However, if something were to happen to Sir Bai because of this Go playbook, His Highness the Crown Prince's wrath will inevitably involve me. This isn't a good thing for both of us. It's better to avoid this layer of karma." Yun Yang chuckled. The Crown Prince, who was initially solemn, broke into a smile and said, "Crown Prince Yun's words are reasonable. The art of the game is intricate, but it's still a minor art after all. It's not a good thing to waste it. It's for the best that nothing serious has happened to everyone now." Sir Bai grinned and said without any ill will, "Young Master Yun is right. Let's forget about this then. I hope I'll still have the chance to learn from the Crown Prince in the future." He thought to himself, "I've memorized the key move of the first game anyway. I'll study it slowly when I get back. If I can break the game, it'll be my own secret. It's better than sharing it with others. I should be the only one left in the history of Go." Yun Yang kept the Go playbook away and bade farewell before leaving. His footsteps were light, as if he had let go of a heavy burden. Sir Bai watched him leave the residence, his eyes gleaming as he said, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, today is the best time to kill Yun Yang." The Crown Prince turned abruptly to look at Sir Bai in bewilderment. It was obvious that His Highness did not understand where Sir Bai's sudden suggestion had come from. Sir Bai sucked in a deep breath and said, "Times have changed. Your Highness has coincidentally established a friendly relationship with Yun Yang by chance. If you strike him now, Your Highness will have an excuse to get rid of suspicion even if someone suspects it later. Furthermore, the assassins are resting now, but it's also a time of chaos. It's extremely convenient to strike now." His Highness nodded slightly and said, "That's right. This is indeed the best time for us to strike. No one will suspect a friend who has just expressed goodwill and goodwill. Sir Bai is wise indeed." Sir Bai nodded with a smile and said leisurely, "It should be heaven's will that Your Highness will succeed. It would be absurd not to take what heaven has given you." Without further ado, His Highness passed down the order at once. Just as the order was about to be delivered, Sir Bai added, "Remember to bring back the Go playbook from young Master Yun. Do not damage it." The Crown Prince was dumbfounded. "Why the F***ck did you kill Yun Yang? Was it for yourself or for yourself? It was only a Go playbook. Was there a need to do it so blatantly, abusing one's authority for personal gain?" His Highness could not understand Sir Bai's mentality at all. Yun Yang walked out of the Crown Prince's residence. Just as he turned a corner, he saw a familiar face. Chapter 629. Shengguan Lingxiu was dressed in martial attire as usual, a pure white cloak draped over her tall, slender frame. Accompanied by a few guards, she stood boldly in the middle of the street, her beautiful eyes watching Yun Yang who was turning over. Her expression was calm, as if she had expected it and was waiting quietly. "Oh, Sister Lingxiu." Yun Yang was pleasantly surprised. "It's a small world indeed. We meet again." Shengguan Lingxiu smiled faintly and said, "There's no surprise here. I've been waiting here for you, Crown Prince Yun." The corners of Yun Yang's lips twitched subconsciously as he said faintly, "May I ask what instructions Sister Lingxiu has for me? Just say it to my face. Yun Yang will always be Yun Yang. How can I have so many other identities?" Shengguan Lingxiu, who already knew his true identity, could not help but feel like laughing when she saw the resentful look on the young man's face, and yet he still wanted to reply to her with a double meaning. "I dare not say that I have any instructions. I really only want to speak to you and ask you a few things. Sister Lingxiu, please speak. This young brother will tell you everything he knows." Shengguan Lingxiu turned and walked away. "Walk with me. We'll talk as we walk." Yun Yang followed her with a pounding heart. What does this madam want with me? Why did he take it so seriously? Yun Yang was not an idiot. At most, his EQ was a little low at times. In the past, he had shouldered the deep grudge of the 9 Supremes. Even if he had realized it, as long as he cast it all aside, how could he be completely unmoved when he had nothing to do and the thoughts of a beautiful woman were deep in love? Both Ji Lingxi and Shengguan Lingxiu felt the same way. Yun Yang was not a fool, how could he not feel it? It was just that Yun Yang had mixed feelings about Shengguan Lingxiu. This woman was strong, brave, determined, and resilient. She did not lack any of the qualities that most men in this world did not possess. In addition, she was beautiful, intelligent, and virtuous. She was willing to work without complaint, willing to contribute, and dared to sacrifice. She had always known what she needed and what she desired. Yet, under the heavy responsibility that she had given herself, she would rather give it up and not fight for it. Because she knew that with the current situation of the Shengguan family, she didn't have the qualifications to pursue the so-called happiness. Her own happiness, whether it was for herself or for the person she loved, was just a heavy burden. Therefore, she chose to endure it. Shangguan Lingxiu had been taking a step back in the face of her rival in love. Step by step, she had backed away from the great love that she could have used as an opportunity to develop, even when she had many convenient conditions, many connections, and elders who were happy to see her. Furthermore, Yun Yang had other feelings towards Shangguan Lingxiu as well, such as pity, respect, and cherishing. She was such a beautiful woman, but because of others and herself, she was shackled with so many heavy shackles. How unfortunate. Sister Lan, you still haven't found it? Shangguan Lingxiu asked softly as she walked slowly. No. Yun Yang heaved a long sigh. No news is good news. Shangguan Lingxiu fell silent before she could finish her sentence. Shangguan Lingxiu had mixed feelings about Yu Rulan as well. On one hand, the intelligent Yu Rulan was the best choice to be a best friend, be it in terms of knowledge, conversation, or any other aspect. On the other hand, Yu Rulan was unscrupulous in matchmaking for Ji Lingxi and had forced Shangguan Lingxiu to concede step by step in all aspects. Shangguan Lingxiu felt uncomfortable. It was one thing to concede willingly, but no one would feel comfortable being forced to do so. If one did not feel anything, one would either not feel anything for the person involved or one would be a fool. Shangguan Lingxiu was not a fool, she would not be oblivious to Yun Yang. Of course, she would feel uncomfortable about Yu Rulan's actions. In spite of this, it was understandable that Yu Rulan was planning for Ji Lingxi. There was nothing that could be done about the difference between closeness and distance. Both parties had different standpoints and it was difficult to reconcile, but the three girls had fought the enemy side by side during the battle at the Fortress of Resilience. The friendship that was built on the battlefield was the strongest. It was normal for them to appreciate each other and feel pity for each other. Therefore, it was inevitable that they would fight and scheme against each other at certain times, but most of the time, especially when Yun Yang was not around, they were still unusually harmonious, like sisters. At the end of the day, Yu Rulan was Ji Lingxi's sister-in-law to be, well, she was already Ji Lingxi's official sister-in-law. If she did not plan for her own sister-in-law, was she supposed to fight for Shangguan Lingxiu? That would be absurd. If he still insisted on being jealous over this, it would be inconsiderate of him to get tangled up in this matter. Now that Yu Rulan had suddenly disappeared, Shangguan Lingxiu's first feeling was not relief but deep sorrow and pain. At once, Shangguan Lingxiu had mobilized all the resources she had at hand to search for her best friend. The search had yet to end and was still ongoing. Shangguan Lingxiu could not help but feel a pang in her heart when she heard that Yun Yang had not found him yet. Sister Lan is such a good person, how could she, sigh. Shangguan Lingxiu sighed and said, I wonder when this chaotic world will truly end. Yun Yang was silent for a moment before he said, it's about to end. Soon. His voice was filled with a longing for life after the war. How are my little nephews doing in your residence? Shangguan Lingxiu changed the topic immediately. Not bad at all. Yun Yang was not stingy with his compliments. Putting aside the fact that these fellows have extraordinary aptitudes, they all have a determined heart. This is exceptionally commendable, not to mention the militaristic demeanor that has been ingrained into their bones. It is constantly on display. Sigh. Instead of saying that they're here to study in the residence of Yun, it's more like they're doing my father a great favor. When Bao, at his young age, sees a group of children who are not much older than him and are so outstanding, he'll naturally want to emulate them and chase after them. This is very beneficial to Bao's growth. Yun Yang looked at Shangguan Lingxiu and said, I'm not exaggerating. Your 6 nephews, be it mystical skill cultivation or the progress of their knowledge, have improved tremendously. Their learning attitudes are upright as well. The teachers who teach them are all full of praises for these 7 children. They're exceptionally worry-free. The word worry-free was a great compliment to the children. Shengguan Lingxiu smiled from the bottom of her heart and said in relief, "That's great, that's great. I only hope that they won't tarnish the Shengguan family of generals' reputation when they grow up." Yunyang said seriously, "I can answer this question in advance now. They'll definitely push the Shengguan family of generals' reputation to another level. I'm very certain that these children can surpass your Shengguan family of generals' ancestors. They can do it." Shengguan Lingxiu nodded, her face flushed with excitement. There was no doubt in her mind because Yunyang was still Supreme Cloud, the 9 Supremes' think tank. His words would not be an exaggeration, nor would he speak without thinking. There must be a reason behind what he said. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.